For those watching on the webcast, we're going to be getting started here in the next 5 to 10 minutes. All right, we're going to get started here with the ELTAC meeting. For those in the room, we want to make sure our voices are broadcast over the web. So for each one of you will have a microphone. Just push the little thing, the green light will come on and make sure we're talking. For emergencies, if the alarm goes off, we're going to end the the meeting, and then we'll all head out of the room and meet in the park across the street. So I don't think anything's going to trigger the alarm here, but we do have about half the LTAC committee attending virtually. So if you could all pop on your cameras for a roll call, or at least so that we can all see all of you. And then we'll get started here with the roll call. And I'm going to direct that to Ruby, who's filling in for our scribe position here, to call out names for the roll call and call to order.
Agustin Pieri,
Present.
James Forrest,
Here.
Judy Morgan,
Present.
Elvin Ewan,
Here.
Peter Art,
Present.
Rachel Cahill,
Present.
Samuel Choi,
Present.
Tuguna Pillai,
Present.
David Dawes,
Present.
Teresa Johnson,
Present.
Erica Calvert,
Present.
Gianfranco Saraceno,
Present.
Melissa Hall,
Here.
Mia Koltunov,
Present.
Renita Prasad,
Present.
and that's it.
All right, great. Welcome, everyone. We have our full committee here with David's acting as alternate for Shushmitha. Since it's been a while, I wanted to give an opportunity for members to give a brief introduction. Let's keep it short. We have quite a few people here, but we'll move through the introduction and just kind of say hello and what laboratory you represent or agency that you represent. We can go through the same order again if you'd like. And that way we have just kind of as a FYI, here's who I am. Give you a chance to introduce yourself. So I'm Christopher Hand. I'm the designated ELAP representative, or the DELAPO, as serving on the committee. I'm in the little pink shirt. I'm raising my hand on the webcast there. For those folk watching on the webcast, this is the view of the room you're going to get. So for those in person, just kind of wave to introduce yourself, so that way folks can see at least a little bit of which person. So when we're speaking in the future, people can identify who's kind of saying what, unless you want to state your name every time you want to talk, which I don't think everyone wants to do. So we'll pass it on. Ruby, if you want to go down the roll call, and we'll give brief introductions.
Agustin Pieri,
Yeah. Hi, my name is Augustine. I'm the technical director at WEC Labs. I've been at WEC Labs for a lot of years now, responsible for method development, developing new technologies, new methods, new techniques, doing much everything in the lab. So big picture lab operations as well for me.
next is James.
Hello. My name is James Forrest. I'm the manager of lab services at California Water, and lab related. Most of my focus is on drinking water.
Might need to move the mic a little bit closer. For folks on Zoom, can you hear everyone all clearly? Or just a little head nod would be good. Thumbs up. Okay, great.
Right, that's it.
Judy,
Yes, I'm Judy Morgan. I am the current chair of ELTAC, as well as the chair of the ACIL Board of Directors. I work for Pace Analytical as the Chief Compliance Officer, and I've been in the industry since 1986. You do the math.
Next is Kevin.
Hi, I'm Kelvin Yun. I'm the laboratory superintendent of the LA County Sanitation Districts. I've been with the district for about 20 years. I oversee 1 main laboratory and 8 satellite laboratories. Thank you.
Rachel, please. Next is Peter.
Now there we go. Peter Arth. I'm the director for environmental toxicology at Nautilus Environmental. I'm an ecotoxicologist by trade. I've been doing this for about 20 years or so, and I oversee the business as a whole, as well as being the lead technical consultant.
The one is here is Teresa Johnson.
Hi, I'm Teresa. I'm with McCampbell Analytical. I'm the Director of Quality Assurance and Lab Safety and oversee a lot of technical aspects within the lab as well.
The next one is Samuel.
Yeah, hi, I'm Samuel Choi. I'm the manager of environmental laboratory and ocean monitoring programs here at Orange County Sanitation District. I've been here about 13 and a half years.
Thank you. Is Suguna next, please?
Hey everyone, this is Suguna Pillai. I'm the manager for laboratory services for City of Palo Alto. I've been with Palo Alto since 2010 at various capacities. And at our lab, we handle both drinking water as well as wastewater. And I'm excited to be joining ELTAC this year.
The last one is David Dawes.
Hi, I am the quality officer here at the Inland Empire Utilities Agency. I've been here about 1.5 years, but I have been working in this industry for about 30 years in the private sector or commercial sector. Thanks.
We have Erica.
Hi there, my name is Erica Calve. I am the Groundwater Protection Section Manager in the Division of Water Quality here at State Water Resources Control Board. I've been in the environmental field for over 25 years and I'm definitely primarily a geologist, but I have a degree in chemistry. I'm always fascinated with laboratory work and really excited to get to participate in ELTAC in this capacity and represent DWQ.
And next is Gianfranco.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Gianfranco Saraceno, and I'm the manager of the Quality Assurance Program at the Department of Water Resources. I'm here as a data user representative for our in-house laboratory, which analyzes non-potable water samples for supporting department operations. Thanks.
Next is Melissa Hall.
Good morning. I've worked with the state and regional water boards for 26 years now in various core regulatory programs and have been with the Division of Drinking Water supervising the regulatory development group for the last almost 8 years. So I'm here representing drinking water.
Next is Moby.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Mui Koltanov, and I am with the Department of Toxic Substances Control. I am the research scientist manager for the laboratory for the department. We have 2 laboratories. One is located in Pasadena, and the other one is in Berkeley. And I am with the department for about 15 years, and this is my first time on this committee. Thank you for having me.
And the last one is Renita.
Hi, my name is Renita. I've been with the State Water Board for about 1 year as a State Water Board QA officer, but I've been within the environmental laboratory industry for about 10 years. And this is my first time on ELTAC, so I'm excited to be here.
Thank you so much to everyone for giving the brief introduction, both new and old members. I'm going to propose that we actually adjust the agenda a little bit. So item number 4, which is the state regulatory agency update and discussion, I'd like to move that one up to now and give the opportunity for our state regulatory agencies to give a little bit of a background on what's been going on or any updates that they'd like to provide before we move into ELTAC bylaw revisions. If that's all right with everyone, the head nods and the little thumbs up on webcam. So I'm not going to say which order. So whomever wants to speak first, have one of the state agencies give an update. Don't all volunteer at the same time.
I can go if Ellen's ready to go after me for microplastics. If that works for her, we can go now.
I'm good with that. Melissa, if you want to start, I'll follow.
Okay. All right. Let me can I share presentation?
You should be able to.
All right. I haven't been in Zoom for a while, so I may need to remind myself how to get there.
I believe it's at the bottom. There's a green button that says share.
Oh, right in the middle. Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
Okay, let me get that and I will start the slideshow. While my computer's making up its mind, if you can hear me, I just wanted to give a drinking water update on what we've been doing with regulatory development related items, especially. There we go. Is this visible?
No.
Okay. Let me see what happened there. How about that?
Looks good.
Okay. All right. So I wanted to give an update for the Division of Drinking Water and or at least part of it. And Len Barabo is going to follow with an update on what's going on with microplastics. So I'm going to go over the MCL review process and plans to revise DLRs, and then go over method development and validation efforts. The upcoming nitrosamines monitoring order, our kind of master plan for PFAS, and opportunities for laboratory engagement. So we'll start with the MCL reviews and DLR revisions. For background, California's Health and Safety Code, Section 116365, requires maximum contaminant levels to be set as close to the public health goal, or PHG, as is economically and technologically feasible, placing primary emphasis on public health and setting standards that are no less stringent than the national standards. They're to be reviewed every 5 years and to check to see if we can get greater protection of public health or closer attainment of the public health goal. And this is where just an outline of the MCL process, and the DLR determination feeds into monitoring costs. It allows us to determine occurrence data. It feeds into exposure, cost estimates. It's really fundamental to determining where we can go with an MCL at the end of the day. So we've been looking to revise detection limits for purposes of reporting, or DLRs. We're looking to get them at or below the public health goals. We currently have more than 30 contaminants with DLRs that are greater than the public health goal. So right now our MCL reviews are currently limited by those. We've been working with ELTAC and the laboratory community over the last several years to determine which DLRs can be lowered. We did a lab survey for metals a while back. It was stalled due to efforts on hexavalent chromium, but we're picking that back up. The last kind of public facing item was a pre-rulemaking workshop held in November of 2022. Right now we're looking to get that back out and to get the notice of proposed rulemaking out in the next several weeks. And here's the proposal. This is what we're planning to put out in late July, early August. You'll note that we've got a phased schedule similar to what we did for perchlorate. We've also as a reminder for those, it's been a while, we are including brand new DLRs for some of the metals with secondary standards because we do not currently have DLRs for those. This package will also include units correction for uranium and revisions to lead and copper rule text to keep reduced monitoring frequency and large water system corrosion control treatment study criteria unchanged despite the change in the DLR. For the next DLR surveys, we're looking at organics, so volatiles and synthetics, or other synthetic semi-volatile organic chemicals, radionuclides potentially, and then any contaminants for which there are new or revised PHGs that would make us want to look a little bit lower. I think one of the next ones would be 1,4-dioxane coming up. For VOCs, these are the analytes that we have identified as we'd like to see some movement to get the DLR lower, closer to the PHG. Some of these, it's not that far off, so we're hoping we can get there. But we would be looking to do a survey on these hopefully later this year or early next year. And then here are the SOCs. And I'm going to pause so you can read through it. And I think we can make these slides available later too if somebody wants to look at these more closely. Also wanted to give an update on how things are looking after the perchlorate DLR revision from a few years ago. For background, the regulations were adopted in late 2020 and took effect in the middle of 2021. We dropped the DLR from 4 to 2 micrograms per liter on July 1st in 2021, and then lowered it further from 2 to 1 at the beginning of last year. Since July 2021, we have had over 31,000 reported results, including 11,000 detections. We've had a few hundred sources with the highest values between 1 and 4 micrograms per liter, and that's what we're looking at to see who would potentially be impacted should we lower the MCL to the public health goal of 1. And we've also noted that several labs have achieved better than required with reporting levels ranging down to 0.1 microgram per liter. We also want to note that there was a court order. The federal government released a draft primary drinking water standard, I think November of this year. So we would, while we've been keeping an eye on monitoring results that have been coming in here in California, depending on what and when comes out from US EPA, we would want to take a look at that to see where that would fit in relative to what we currently have in California. Next, I wanted to go over our method development and validation efforts. We've got 4 in particular that I want to talk about: saxitoxins, 1,H-benzotriazole, trifluoroacetate or TFA, and nitrosamines. Those first 3, we have been working on method validation through our contract with California Department of Food and Agriculture's Center for Analytical Chemistry. The lab logos you see here are laboratories who have participated in our validation study efforts, and we really appreciate their giving of their time and effort to do this, and we would not be able to move these things forward without them. So really appreciate that participation and effort. Starting with saxitoxins. For background, this is one of the cyanotoxins. It comes from harmful algal blooms. It's a neurotoxin. OEHA has recommended a notification level of 0.5 microgram per liter for up to 1 day of exposure. The method that we have been going through the validation process with is a screening or ELASA method. We're looking at a minimum reporting level of 0.5 microgram per liter and a holding time of 6 days. Right now, all laboratory work is completed and the study documentation is being finalized. So up next, we would be requesting ELAP accreditation offering once we get through our internal review process. And then moving forward, hopefully this summer, with proposing notification response levels for this, along with the other 3 cyanotoxins for which OEHA provided recommended notification levels. Next, 1,H-benzotriazole. For background, this is a corrosion and UV inhibitor, an anti-fogging agent, and plastic stabilizer. For health endpoint, it's related to kidney toxicity. It's been omnipresent in Dutch drinking water, and there's a German health standard of 3 parts per billion, but none here. For method, the instrumentation is a direct injection LC tandem MS, and we're looking at a minimum reporting level of 0.15 parts per billion and a hold time of 72 hours. Again, all laboratory work is completed, and the draft final report and procedure are due to the Division of Drinking Water later this month. Next, TFA. It's one of the PFAS compounds. It's a PFAS transformation product, solvent, refrigerant, polymerization catalyst. It's an ultra low chain PFAS. It's not included in EPA's current definition, but is included in other definitions of PFAS internationally. It does require more research on health effects, but what researchers are finding so far are possible liver developmental and reproductive effects. It is ubiquitous wherever it's been tested. Its prevalence is far in excess of other PFAS chemicals. For the method, instrumentation is again LC and tandem MS and a minimum reporting level of 10,000 nanograms per liter. And again, all lab work's done and we're working on finalizing study documentation. So once we get through that, again, we'll work through our internal process to make a request to ELAP to offer accreditation. And we will revisit TFA again when we get to the PFAS topic. Last, nitrosamines. For background, this is a part of a group of disinfection byproducts. This effort started with interest in generated related to health effects that were shown from NMOR and a particular interest in that compound relative to recycled water. While we were looking at getting a method validated for that, we also realized that we don't have an ELAP offering for NDMA. Not ELAP's fault, that's our fault. We wanted to get through a method validation for this so that we had something for drinking water and something that meets programmatic needs for nitrosamines in general. And so that we can move forward. NDMA has a PhD and has had one since 2006. We've got very little occurrence data, so not having an accredited method offering has been a barrier to getting data that we would want to rely on for rulemaking purposes. Now that that barrier has been removed, we want to move forward with data collection. So where that's at, we finished the method validation in 2023. ELAP has had the accreditation offering available since September 2024. And then just for updated status on any method development or validation efforts, links to the methods that have been validated and information on how to recommend methods for validation can be found on the page listed here. And then I'm going to segue over to the nitrosamines monitoring order that's coming up. As I mentioned, we've had a public health goal. We've had not enough data to base an MCL development effort on. So we're looking as our next step to proceed with data collection and a monitoring order. And we're targeting this winter to try to have that out by. We might include, well, we're still working on scope, but we may include additional disinfection byproducts in that monitoring order. And then we would be looking down the road toward preliminary cost estimates in a workshop in 2026 or 2027. So questions I have for the lab community at the end of this are, historically, we had up to 9 laboratories submitting drinking water data for nitrosamines. That was prior to an accreditation offering. There was a variety of methods being used over the last decade. Since accreditation has been offered for the EEA 521.1 method, we've only had 1 laboratory attain accreditation. So we're interested in finding out from the laboratory community what the interest is in nitrosamines accreditation and if there are any barriers in pursuing that right now. And we'll look forward to hearing from that because ideally we would like to have more than 1 laboratory available for water systems to rely on as we move forward with the monitoring order. Next up, our overarching plan for PFAS. For background, and you can see an artifact of the regulatory priorities update from earlier this year in the upper left-hand corner. Anyway, for background, this is a group of synthetic compounds used in nonstick cookware, food packaging, stain repellent, firefighting foam, etc. We've issued a number of notification response levels over the last several years. There's a final PFOA and PFOS PhD, or the PhDs were finalized by OEHA spring last year, not too far from when EPA finalized their primary drinking water standards. Since then, most recently, EPA has issued a press release that they are going to retract some of their or their finalized MCLs. So we'll see how that goes. Right now, this is what we're seeing. We've got public health goals for PFOA and PFOS. We've got these are the current notification response levels. I don't know if the strike through is very clear for everyone, but EPA's proposal is to remove all but PFOA and PFOS MCLs and revisit those. So that's where we're at right now. This is another way of looking at it. These are kind of the full list of analytes that we have looked at for advisory or regulatory levels at this time. And you can see again what we've got here. Other items that are shown here that weren't shown on the previous table are we just recently requested a public health goal for PFH excess, and at the same time withdrew our request for notification level recommendations for PFNA, PFDA, and ADANA. We want to look at monitoring data down the road and revisit what we really need for California regulations. And then we are still looking forward to getting a notification level recommendation for PFHPA sometime soon. So our general plan at this time is to handle PFAS in 2 stages. The first stage would be focused on obtaining primacy or the ability to directly enforce the federal regulations through having no less stringent regulations in California. So the first stage would focus on that with limited adjustments, namely to fit in with California's monitoring requirements and scheme that we've maintained. The standards would be placed in a new Title 22 article. Then the second stage would be focused on California-specific regulations and pursuing a treatment technique option and looking to see if we could regulate the numerous PFAS chemicals via a sentinel or indicator or subclass. We're not sure what name we're going to ultimately go with, basis, probably based on light chemistry or treatment or health effects. So we're looking at how viable that is. Having the TFA method is going to be important, we think, there, as are other method developments. So to support that, we did, as I mentioned, we did make the public health goal request for PFHXS. PFOA and PFOS are certainly dominating in terms of public health interest and occurrence in California. PFHXS is kind of next on the list and has some different health endpoints and some different, based on CDPH's CARE study, what's happening with serum PFHXS looks a little bit different. So we wanted to pursue that one. We also have another statewide monitoring order coming up. This time it's everybody, not just kind of working from known sources of PFAS out. This would be for all community and non-transient and non-community water systems initially. We would look at adding transient and non-community monitoring later after we consider the results from the non-transient non-community systems and any updated health effects studies and methodology available. The systems would be supplementing existing results to complete initial monitoring requirements for the federal regulations. And we would be looking to have a draft of that order out later this year and then have it issued and going into implementation mode early next year. So we'll use that, like I said, to identify contaminants of chief California public health interest so we can figure out which of those we want to make PhD requests for. And then opportunities for laboratory engagement. We very much appreciate the laboratories who have participated in the validation studies. We also really appreciate all the laboratories that take time to respond to our surveys on cost, capability, and capacity. Other opportunities are participating in a work group. Augustin has been admirable as a one-person ELTAC work group. Really appreciate his time and input. Would love to see other laboratories or other perspectives, especially maybe from the municipal or utility side for laboratories. But other opportunities, of course, are providing comments on the pre-rulemaking drafts, participating in workshops, and commenting in the official rulemaking. Commenting in the official rulemaking once that actually starts. Constructive comments, rather than we don't like this, are always the most useful. Those are ones that we can do more with. It's especially helpful when alternatives are proposed. So we do appreciate the engagement that we've had in the pre-rulemaking process so far for metal DLRs and look forward to more as we move into the formal rulemaking stage. And with that, I'm done with my presentation. We can either do questions now if interested, or move on to Ellen's update on microplastics.
Maybe let's pause here for questions specific to this topic and then move to microplastic specific questions.
Okay.
After Helene gives a little presentation. So I'll open it up to any committee members that want. If you're on Zoom, feel free to unmute yourself, provide a question.
This is Teresa. Melissa, I just want to let you know, actually, we are applying for 521.1 this summer. So we have a third-party assessment coming in to do the nitrosamines assessment.
Okay, great.
This is Augustine from WEC Labs. I had a question about your ultra short TFA method. When the EPA hopefully eventually pushes their ultra short method across the finish line, would that California method remain, or would you guys adopt the EPA method, you think?
I'd have to see. I would probably be doing some internal analysis of what, or evaluation of what we want. I don't know how they compare ultimately with detection levels or hold times, or instrumentation. I haven't looked at the federal one yet. But we could take a look at that. We do obviously have other methods or other analytes out there for which multiple methods are available, and there are multiple accreditation offerings. So I think we'd probably want to find out from the laboratory community if they, what their opinion is on it too. Because we do, I think, like to have options where we can, but we'd have to compare them too.
Thanks.
So I'm going to forward another question on from an interested party related to what Melissa was talking about early on about microcystins, cyanotoxins, that kind of thing. They're looking at what the difficulty would be to require a one-day turnaround time for any of the ELISA kit methods or any of the HPLC methods, right? They want to hear, is that how difficult that would be? Could it be done? If there are multiple samples in a day, would those be able to be started on the same day, or would those need to be split? So what kind of the practicality of that would be, and then what the practicality would be of like a composite sample. So for that kind of analysis, if anyone's got any familiarity with microcystins, harmful algal blooms, ELISA kits, I'll open it up to the committee to answer those questions.
Sure, it's Augustine again. Is it possible? Yes. Is it easy? No. Yeah, I think requiring a one-day turnaround time on something like this would be very difficult in most labs. It's doable, but the logistics are difficult, right? There are some prep steps. There's the actual processing of the sample, so it's not so easy. Like you can just add more to the auto sampler, right? It's a bit of a different type of test than your regular testing. So requiring that kind of turnaround time would be pretty tough on most labs, unless it was a dedicated lab that only did this kind of work. So I would suggest not requiring a turnaround time. I understand that people need to know because it is a quick issue. But I don't know about other labs, but our lab we'd be pretty tight to do it on a regular basis. I think a couple, yes, for emergency situations, but on a regular basis, probably not.
No, I agree with Augustine. I think that these type of tests are possible on short periods of time, but that would require the sample getting there very early. It requires dedicated staff. It requires people knowing in advance when it is coming. And what we've noticed is while all of those things are potentially doable in these type of situations, it often slips. And then that's where this sort of undue pressure comes in, and then other types of turnarounds suffer.
Yeah, depending on to Rachel, yeah, definitely. Even when we were doing the UCMR, that was a really big struggle. is keeping up with turnaround times and making sure that I'm having all the kids on hand. That preparation is key, definitely.
Any other questions for Melissa or comments on hold times and turnaround times?
Well, one more, I guess, comment. On the PFAS monitoring order or the notification levels and DLRs, I would recommend something that EPA didn't do is to just set a low DLR instead of having a variable. Maybe you could report to here or maybe report to here. Just make it low. Like all the labs that are doing PFAS analysis can see very low levels. I think it makes it tough when one lab is reporting at 5, another lab is reporting at 1. The data comparison becomes a little bit difficult on the regulatory side, I'd imagine. And it makes it tough for people, looking at all these data sets if the reporting limits aren't so consistent. So I would recommend just pushing them lower. If a lab can see 5, they can absolutely see 1. There's no difficulty there. So my suggestion for that, as you guys work on those kinds of limits, is just to push them as low as possible where it's possible. So survey would come in handy for that for sure, but also with the idea that lower is a little bit better than not as low. That's what we learned in the previous UCMR cycles. That's what we have to do it twice.
Point taken. I'll pass that along to the group working on the monitoring order.
Right, hearing and seeing nothing else. You want to introduce Elaine?
Yes, Dr. Elaine Baribeau is currently tackling a lot of different topics right now. She has been, I don't know all of her background, but she's been in and out of the drinking water industry for quite a long time. And I had the pleasure of having her in my unit briefly for a while and enjoying working with her again in her current role as a senior specialist focusing on corrosion control, but also taking on the microplastics topic.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Melissa. And I just want to make sure you guys can hear me and you can see my slide in presentation mode.
Yes.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah. So as Melissa said, I'm actually Senior Specialist Technical Operations Section, Division of Drinking Water. My main role is actually distribution system water quality, which is a bit far from microplastic, but I've been working on microplastics since actually SB 1422. And then when I was away from DDW, I continued to work on microplastic as well. So when Scott left, it made sense for me to continue. And happy to be back working on microplastics. So, what I want to start with is actually maybe using SB 1422 as a reminder that really dictated the work of DDW on microplastic. And so the first part of the SB 1422 was actually to adopt a definition of microplastic, and that was done in time in June 2020. Then the second provision was to adopt standard methodology for testing of microplastic. And so we focused on really the detection part of the method. And so that was done with FTIR and Raman. So there are 2 possible detection methods. Then another provision was to adopt requirements for testing and reporting in water. And these requirements are laid out in the policy handbook. Another requirement is also to consider issuing quantitative guidelines. And so for this one, there was a determination that was made in 2021 to not set a health-based guideline, because at the time there were insufficient evidence that microplastic have an impact on humans. There was quite a bit of a knowledge gap. I mean, today there's the evidence that microplastic may present health risk are growing, but we still lack clarity, to be able to really determine a quantitative guideline. So that determination made in 2021 probably still stand today, although there's still more work that needs to be done with that. And the last bullet point is probably the one that interests you guys the most, is to accredit qualified labs in California. So where we are right now, we have procedures in place 3 labs have been accredited thus far, and I was contacted by a 4th one that is also interested in being accredited. So we'll see when that starts. So to accomplish these tasks, and I'm listing here the last little box, to accomplish these tasks, DDW contracted with Squirp And you can see here, like considering that SB 1422 was signed in 2018, so right away in 2019, there were some work that were already started by SCORP. So the first part that they focused on was to the FTIR and the Raman methodology. And then after that, working with ELAP on the accreditation process. And considering the complexity of microplastic, there were additional tasks that were needed later on. And you can see here the last timeline, actually, the last contract ended in March 2025. So like just, a couple of months ago. So I want to go over the detail of the method because I think it's important to understanding so you guys can appreciate where we are right now. Again, during in 2019, when SCORP was working on the methodology and, following SB 1422. So the first part of the method that was focused on was really the detection of microplastic particles. And that can be done using two instruments, FTIR and Raman, two spectroscopic methods. But then we also know that microplastics are actually few in water. And so we're talking about like 1 in about 1,000 particles can be microplastic. And in some waters, like if we think of treated drinking water, it could be as low as 1 in 10,000 particles. And so we know that we need to concentrate a large volume of water to be able to have like meaningful and representative samples. So there was a need then to add additional steps to the method. And the first one is the one that you have to the left. It's basically sample collection or sample concentration. And ASTM actually has a method that is a stack of sieves, like just the one that you can see here. And so if you're concentrating large volumes of water, however, you end up with a lot of other particles. So you're going to end up with sediments, with organics, with inorganics, and a lot of other substances that you will need to remove before you can send the sample to be read or to be detected with the FTIR or Raman instruments. And so there was also a step 2 here that needed to be included to clean up the material. If I circle back on step 1, I go back to that one. So ASTM had their stack of sieve, and they recommended filtering 1,500 liters. Now, you can imagine that if you filter 1,500 liters in an open sieve stack like this, you're going to end up also with a lot of contamination, considering that microplastics are just about everywhere, a little bit like PFAS, actually. And so there were developments to basically encapsulate the sample collection device. And so this is what we have right now, which is basically, and I'm not sure if you see my cursor, but it's like basically a filter holder, stainless steel filter holder, where the membrane is going to be like in between these two filter holders. And all of that is, all the apparatus is in stainless steel, and you can filter the sample through that to minimize contamination. You can imagine that you can have multiple of these filter holders here, one after the other, to have filters of different porosity. And then you can cap this device, and once you collect your sample and sending to the lab for analysis. So it's pretty elegant process. So where we are right now is that like step 3 is accredited. That was done already. This is the one we have 3 labs accredited already. Step 1, we have an SOP that is available. It's a solid document. Each step were developed carefully and looking at different variation of each step. But that method has been used only by 1 lab right now. They've used it extensively, but it's still only 1 lab. So other labs haven't tried it, hasn't been validated. Step 2 is a bit more complicated. We have an SOP that was developed back in 2019, 2020, and the early work that SCORP did for DDW. The method has, I'm going to call them flat out deficiencies. And since then, there's also been other SOPs that have been used and that have been developed, even ASTM has its own. Each of the accredited labs have their own also method that they have experimented with. And these methods are not necessarily the same. And with all the weaknesses of the SOP that we have that were given by our contractor, that SOP also has not been validated. It was tested only with one sample that is not really representative of water or untreated water even. And so, but it has not really been tried with, real water that we use for drinking water purposes. And so, and again, same thing here, it has not been validated. So this is a bit where we are. So we are a little bit like, I would say, in a pickle, maybe. So we do have like the tail end of the method. We can read microplastic, we can detect them. This is accredited. We have a good step with the sample collection. We still have like issues with the sample preparation. So with respect to sending the monitoring order, this is the decision that we have to make right now. In early April, it came to my attention that DWQ actually had potential funding available, and DWQ has been like a supporter of microplastic and the work that DDW has done. And so they were interested in helping us to develop to finalize the methodology. So I submitted 3 concept proposals to them, and I'm waiting to hear back. This is going to have to go to budget here at the end of the month and next month. And so depending on the outcome of this, if we do have funding available and we can finalize the method, then we'd be able to move more cautiously and, with like more certainty that the methods we are using for the monitoring orders are really like, the best one, and we can really get the results that we intend to have. If that doesn't work, then we're going to need to look at different options. Do we move forward with the SOPs that we have right now, and we recalibrate later as science continue to evolve and other agencies are looking into, perfecting the methods? It's going to have to be decided. So it's a little bit where we are. And with that, I'm going to stop here. These are all the slides that I had prepared, and I'm sure you guys have questions, so I'm happy to answer that. None?
It looks like none here.
Oh, okay.
Anyone online? Questions? Seeing none? Okay. Well, thank you very much to both Melissa and Helene for giving the joint DDW update there. I'll hand it off to any of the other state agencies that want to give a brief update, presentation or verbal update otherwise.
This
Hi.
is,
Oh,
sorry,
go
go ahead,
on.
Anita. No, you go.
Okay. I am sorry, my name is Renita again. And I just wanted to give a quick update on the DMR QA study. It's going to be a verbal update. So EPA has not released their notification as of yet for the DMR QA study, but I just did want to let the lab community know that the study is still continuing. Typically, at the water boards, we wait for the EPA to release its national study letter before sending out the California notification. However, as we know, the EPA and the federal government are going through some adjustment and changes right now, so we're being understanding of that. And so there should be a letter received by on behalf of the water boards for the DMR QA study 45. That's going throughout this calendar year. And if it has not been received, then it is on its way. So look out for that in your inboxes and work with your PT providers to submit those reports as usual. Thank you. That's all.
Yeah, I can go next for Division of Water Quality. And yeah, I just want to say appreciate all the updates, getting to hear more in detail what's going on with our other orgs within water boards, and also don't have as much to share, I guess, as DDW. Relatively new to this position, and so I did do a survey to get feedback from our division. What would be, to share here today. And so I just have a verbal update. One item that has recently come to our attention is kind of a concern related to toxicity testing for threatened species that is done in accordance with some of the requirements in our ocean plan. And that it came to our attention that there are the collection of species for these tox tests is sometimes exceeding the the amount of species that can be taken given the take permit that is issued by California Fish and Wildlife. So we are aware that this is an issue, and we are anticipating that we will start to hear feedback potentially from dischargers about challenges with completing testing. And so we just wanted to share with you all that, you know, this has just recently come to our attention. We're not sure if the laboratory community is aware of this issue. And we'd love to hear any input or feedback from this group if it's appropriate, or if this is a topic for the LTAC to chime in on. Another kind of item to share was with regard to food and ag. And this is sort of related to work that may, you know, requirements associated with our winery general order, our cannabis program, as well as our irrigated lands regulatory program. We do recognize a gap in accredited crop tissue methods for nitrogen testing. And so there may be some lab capacity issues with that as well. So sort of highlighting that that's one of the things that's on our radar that we're tracking. And then another item for us to share is just, you know, we're definitely very much tracking what the work that DDW is doing with regard to their PFAS work. And they have a study that's currently ongoing called the Broad Spectrum Project. And through that project, they're using what we're kind of referring to as sort of like a total PFAS approach to analyzing for PFAS. It's inclusive of a bulk parameter methodology called adsorbable organic fluorine, and then obviously also including the ultra shorts, which Melissa mentioned, such as TFA. So we're very much aware of kind of the results that are coming in from that ongoing study, and recognizing, you know, that the state is interested in taking a class-based approach to managing PFAS. And so DW is certainly taking the lead here, but we at DWQ have it on our radar as well, just the value of being able to start to include methods that go beyond the targeted methods. And, you know, we're aware, obviously, US EPA published method 1621, and we've seen very little kind of on I guess like boarding of that method with the laboratory community. And we've also seen that the cost to do that analysis is relatively high. And wanted to sort of just share an impression we have would be that in some cases, maybe laboratories are choosing to implement every single recommendation associated with that method. The method is intended to be a screening method, method 1621. And so we embrace that completely and think that it would be great to start to see more affordability around the use of that method, and kind of just honoring the fact that it is a screening method and being able to use it to analyze, you know, presence, absence, order of magnitude sort of level of information so that we can get a better sense of total PFAS distribution, you know, recognizing that it is not technically a total PFAS method. It's just sort of a surrogate for it, and kind of keeping in mind what's missed in that method, like the ultra shorts, and you know, kind of other subgroups within the PFAS class that can be lost in the method analysis process. But with that said, I just sort of wanted to put that out there that we would love to engage in a way where we would start to see that method could become more affordable and become more accessible for investigations for different types of water quality monitoring in the future. And then I'd say too, yeah, just really appreciate the work that DW has led with regards to microplastics. So we don't have any major updates there, but we're just tracking what's going on in that space, and kind of aware of the limitations with the method collection and analysis that make it challenging to implement microplastics monitoring. And I think that pretty much covers it for us. So if anybody has anything that they want to ask, I may not have the answers, but I can certainly bring it back to our division and come back with more updates next time.
So I'll just, as the toxicity guy in the room, I guess I probably should address the point on species scarcity that you brought up. Yeah, so this is what you're referring to, I believe, is the giant kelp challenge that's going on right now. I see heads nodding, yes. And it's potentially something that ELTAC can look at. It would have to be done in conjunction with state board staff because the challenges lie in certain geographical restrictions, and this is the only core marine algal species that is present in NPDES discharge permits. There aren't any alternates that are available right now, and so this would be going down into the newly issued toxicity provisions for regulation of inland discharges, marines, and estuaries, and adding that to the table of available species, as well as finding a mechanism to allow it in several hundred NPDES permits that have it currently written in as the monitoring species. So it is a challenge. It's something that I brought up at state board meeting in November of last year and spoke about with Rebecca Fitzgerald. So it's something that ELTAC potentially can pick up, but it is a big issue from sort of a regulatory change standpoint, and it is creating some challenges. At this point, I would rate them as manageable, but this is going down the road as we continue to potentially see the impacts of climate change and decreasing of available native populations, something that's going to have to be addressed in the next year or so. So I'm also happy to answer questions if people have them, but I did want to sort of chime in on that point, and I appreciate you bringing it up.
Yeah, that's great to know. And yeah, I guess what's the process, Chris, for us to engage with, I appreciate that suggestion that, it would need to be a group effort, and that a big part of the challenge is the regulatory kind of aspects that, our staff would be able to maybe collaborate with ELTAC on. What's the process for us if that would be a topic of interest for the group to kind of help navigate?
So it depends. LTAC has a bunch of different options that they can do. One of them is they could vote to form a subcommittee specific to a topic, and that could be inclusive of non-LTAC committee members, right? So it would have to have some representation from LTAC, but any other interested parties could be involved. The other option that I see is potentially being to drum up more interest is put it as a big agenda item for one of the future meetings. And that way you bring in the staff that at the state board that want to tackle that topic and then bring it to LTAC for a potential committee vote there or a specific direction. But LTAC could also write general recommendations too. So if they have we think the state board should do this specific thing, they can write a formal recommendation and provide that as a written document as well. So the committee can do any kind of those things. So I guess it's up to you of what you would like the committee to do in terms of what direction you think would work best.
Okay, great. Well, I think what I would do then under this case is just bring it back to, to the team that is engaged on this issue and follow up with you, Chris, on what the team thinks would make sense. And it sounds like we would bring it to the next meeting regardless for LTAC to vote on if, say we did want there to be a subcommittee, or we were going to ask that of LTAC. We would bring it back to the next meeting and then you guys would vote on it.
That sounds great. I know that's a future agenda topic, but the notice also has we can kind of talk on any topic, not necessarily in the order that they're listed. So I'll put that down as future LTAC topic number one. I'm seeing a bunch of head nods here. Um, I don't know if we need to do a formal vote for these kinds of things, but I think an informal list of topics is going to be good. So we'll put that as number one on future topics, and then we'll circle back when that section comes up. How's that sound?
That sounds great. And thank you so much for that feedback. Really appreciate it.
Any other members have questions or comments for Erica? Anything on nitrogen plant testing? That's and kind of an uncommon, we don't really offer any tissue testing methods specifically for accreditation. So if there's any barriers that you all know of regarding tissue testing, that might be good to share for the group as well. All right, seeing none, we can move on to Mui or John Franco to provide a brief update.
I can go. I'm just gonna verbally say it. In terms of the work that we're doing in our department, in continuation with the PFAS theme, recently, I'm not sure if you're aware of, there's two bills that basically passed, which is AB 347, which bans PFAS in the following categories of consumer products. They include cosmetics, juvenile products, textile furnishings, upholstered furnitures. There's another bill regarding menstrual products as well, AB 2515. And then there's two regulations that SCPR program actually that are in effect, and that is on PFAS with carpets and rugs, and then fabric treatment products.
Any questions or comments for Mui?
I have a question. Is that okay?
Of course, you're a member of the committee.
Great. Yeah, I was curious if uh i- what test methods are being used to evaluate the presence of PFAS in products once these bans are in place? Is there are there any um I don't know very much about that side of the PFAS testing realm, and I think there's a lot of people who are wondering, including even the, manufacturers themselves. I don't know if you can speak to that.
Yeah, so I think there is lack of methods, available standardized methods for sure. We normally, what we do in our laboratories, actually, we do develop these methods in-house, and once we have developed the methods, we can share them and have that available through that. The majority of the method is usually just looking at total fluorine by CIC, which is combustion ion chromatography. There are certain products where there's discussion of looking at total organic fluorine. And I think that's specific to one of the bill that is in process of, it's in with the legislature right now. But the ones that's been passed is basically you can look at total fluorine for that. There are some works that's looking at more of targeted PFAS, but again, right, targeted meaning you're only limited to whatever we can target. But I think the idea is if you can, regardless whether you can target it or the total fluorine, if you do see any presence of PFAS, then that would be, that would not be allowed, right? So there's not like a low threshold, but it's just the present or not present.
I had a question about that threshold. Present, not present could mean a lot of things, right? If we're looking at percent levels, everything's got less than 1% PFAS. But if you set a level of some metric, then it's something easier to kind of quantify. Is there any idea to set those things, to put a ban in place? It has to be less than some amount, some percentage by mass or something?
There are some that is sort of banding like total PFAS. For some of it, there are some that are like in the low ppm levels, like 10 or 50 ppm. The two regulations that we have for carpets and rugs and fabric treatments, right? There's also some complication when it comes to, is it intentionally added, right? Or is not intentionally added. And so when we were doing some compliance testing for these two product types, we're aware that there may be some residual PFAS, non-intentional use of PFAS. So that is very something we take into sort of consideration. This is sort of the initial beginning of it. We haven't done too much enforcement work of it. But what we try to do is target, products that have really high levels, right? And so with CIC, with total fluorine by CIC, we have like a quantitation limit around 20 ppm, right? So if we see products that exceeds, that's like above 100 ppm or even 1,000, those are the ones that we normally would work with the manufacturers or the suppliers of those products and kind of further evaluate. So it's sort of an ongoing work in terms of how do we want to enforce, some of these regulations and stuff, because it is, complicated because of, you might have presence, due to the fact that it could be intentional versus unintentional. And so I think we do want to evaluate that very closely.
Yeah, so this is Judy. I just want to add something to what you're saying. One of the things that we've seen in some of the other states that where they have tried to regulate the same thing in the consumer products is actual manufacturers who have proof of no PFAS being in their actual product. So their raw materials coming from other suppliers. So you've got that kind of proof that comes with that, as well as, other things. So what has happened with some of the other states is some of that legislation has just kind of stalled because there's a number of manufacturers that's basically saying we can get this kind of proof, we won't need to do this kind of testing. But then again, you have others that are kind of stalling out because even with a total fluorine analysis, what level requires additional analysis from the standpoint of identification for the unintended, if you will. So even if you have proof, there will be suppliers that you won't have that information on. So what kind of triggers that additional analysis and what are you looking for? So this, while it's a struggle with this type of legislation here or this type of regulation, other states are seeing the same things. And I think it would be interesting to understand maybe if some of these other states have overcome those types of decisions.
Would you know, Mui, if other states have had, or are these legislative efforts or regulatory efforts, are they pulling from info from other states, or are they kind of separate?
So we are in we do have communication with other states, and we do try to collaborate with other states to sort of deal with, some of these issues. So we do have these conversations around that. It varies so much from state to state in terms of, where they are in the timeline and how fast they can push certain regulations through and things like that. I would say a lot of the state that do have these ban or regulations in place, they don't have laboratories that would support a lot of the testing as well. So that in itself is a big challenge for a lot of these states and there's, some of the states do seek out our laboratory to be able to help them with the testing too. So with that in mind, we're learning as much from them and in trying, to and that would help us, kind of determine how we would want to enforce some of these regulations or even, write better regulations on how we should be doing it. But I would say it's we are learning as we go along, I guess. And I think what is one thing that we try to do is just being more proactive with the manufacturers and say, here's what we're getting, here's the data, and then how do we want to, work with them in a way to find solutions in which either they need to phase it out or they need, so it's kind of case by case in terms from manufacturers because we're seeing a wide variety of levels and things like that. And so it's hard to generalize, I guess, too much at this point. But what I can say is we did one compliance testing for carpets and rugs. We had purchased samples that are pre-regulations. We had about like 50 or 60 samples of it. We tested the levels, and a lot of them are in the high 100 ppm levels and even higher with total fluorine. And we've done testing for over 200 plus carpets post regulations, and we've seen level that significantly dropped below that. So we do see that manufacturers are sort of complying with the regulations, and we do see that trend that it is working, and they are doing their best effort to sort of phase it out. But again, there are many that still have low levels, right? And presumably that could be non-intentional, could be a residual of raw materials or recycled materials that they've used. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but it's a bit not too straightforward.
No, I think you did great. Thank you so much. Hold it open for any other questions. Now we'll move on to John Franco to give a brief little update as well from Water Resources side.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. The big update I have that's relevant to this group today is that the in-house laboratory at Department of Water Resources, Bright Chemical Laboratory, has achieved TNI -2 compliance, and that will be reflected on their next Field of Accreditations certificate. And I'm just interested in hearing the new ideas from the new members, and also there are some topics that I would like to bring up at some point, and that is really centered around the applicability of some of the PT samples for the fields of accreditation for our department and some of the department data users. So that's something I'd like to put on an agenda for a future discussion, or perhaps we could discuss it later today. That's all. Thank you.
All right, any questions for John Franco? Hearing none, I'm just going to pause to check over with the scribes. Nope. Okay, so we have no members on the online, but if we could put up the splash screen for folks who have public comments that they want to submit viewing on the webcast. The email inbox is elapca_comments@waterboards.ca.gov. And we can either read your email aloud, or if you want to join the Zoom connection info, we will send that off to you as well. So with that, hearing nothing else, I wrote down your note, John Franco, for PTs. We'll talk about that at the future topics discussion towards the end of the day. And I'll move on to the ELTAC bylaw update. So that was emailed out to all the members here prior to the meeting. For the folks who want it online, we can easily distribute that to you. We can't, unfortunately, post it online with the track changes, just because the accessibility does not favor track changes very well. So if you want a copy, send us an email. We'll happily provide it to you, but we can't post it online until it's more finalized than what it is right now. I'm going to share the screen on the webcast, and we'll walk through it. So if members have any topics that they've identified that they really, really want to discuss, we can jump to that section. Otherwise, we'll just move straight through the topics in order. And I get that instant feedback. I'm going to pause for a brief second to grab power, just to make sure the computer didn't die in the middle of this while we share this, and I'll set it so hopefully it's more readable on the screen here. All right. Moving through the bylaws, I have not changed anything. These are all changes that are proposed from me. They're not fully compliant with the Bagley-Keene Act. We haven't had our lawyers go through it. They've had more than enough work, so we'll give it to them when the committee members have finalized, just to make sure we're compliant. But there are some sections of the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act that are going to change in 2026. So instead of doing a bylaw revision to update it and be compliant with current law, it's going to be updated to be compliant with the future law, right? We want to make sure we don't have to update the bylaws again once the rules change. So there's a couple links now to the Bagley-Keene Open Meeting Act, but for the most part, changes in this are all specific to that. So if anyone has any proposed changes for the mission statement or the objectives or functions, let me know. And please, if you have any comment that you want to make, go ahead and unmute yourself and make a comment. But it's not formal. Just just say, hey, I want to talk more about this section. So this, go ahead. I heard a noise.
Yes, sorry about that. So one of the LTAC members who could not attend today, she wanted to bring it to the group that she was asking if LTAC can propose or ask for a meeting to avoid those instances where we don't meet for over a year.
Yes, so that's one of the additions. I don't remember what section it's in, sorry. That has 2 meeting dates set. And very specific timeframes of this is when these meetings are going to occur. Spring and fall, one in May and one in November. And those will be the meeting dates set unless otherwise determined by LTAC, or, we have a specific topic that, hey, we really want to talk about this one topic. Let's bring this together. So that's one of the changes that's in the bylaws of sets very specific meeting dates that are Obviously, I can't write them to be super explicit because I don't know what availability we're going to have on all the rooms and buildings and who knows what's going to happen in some of those days. So, but yes, that would be one of them that we're going to add. I'll get to that section and I'll highlight it more in the future. But Article 5 for membership, this is a clarification on what position names are going to be. So representatives, I have put to be voting members of the committee that are from the laboratory community. So that's the 10 voting members that we have right now. And then it defines the chairperson role, which is basically the same. Anything in green here is text that's been moved from a different section. So that's why it all is underlined. Most of it's the same, but it's been moved to this specific section. But we did add a vice chairperson. So that would give more flexibility for, say, if Judy is not here, we could still have the meeting, having the vice chair act in the chair role, right? Anyone have any comments or questions about these positions?
Yeah,
Seeing a lot of-
I
Go
had
ahead.
one more question from another member. It was she says, I don't see candidate nominations. Are nominations and voting happening the same day?
That's a good question. Open the floor for anyone to have comments on how they want to work that. And I'm going to add a comment here. Anyone have any opinions?
Can we do that not with the quorum? Like, can we nominate via email, or does it have to be per Bagley Keene in public so we can see?
I don't know. I think it has to be made public for who's being nominated. But and voting has to occur via a quorum of members, right? You can't have a non-quorum vote for somebody. But I don't think there's a provision that so. Sorry for the webcast, folks. I'm looking over at our legal counsel, Kim. Hello, everyone. No, that's okay. I'm going to repeat it too. That she's saying, no, we can have, if we put in the bylaws here, the process of how that's going to work. So if we want the process to be nominations occur via email and then they get voted on by the committee, that should be fine. So any opinions on whether you want to do it via email or via verbal nominations during the meetings?
I would say as much that's allowable by email, the better.
All right, I'm going to repeat Peter if he didn't hear, because Peter prefers to do as much as is possible via email. So I could see that happening. The only pause that I have is under the Bagley Keene, we can't have serial meetings. So that means we can't all email, like you can't email one after the other, after the other, after the other to a quorum of members. And we also can't have like a hub and spoke. So you can't have everyone email one person about topics that aren't going to be on the ELTAC agenda. I think for nominations, none of the voting is going to happen. It's going to be like, I want this person to work, or I want this person to be chair. And that vote would happen if, hey, we got all the nominations and things like that. I think that'd be fine.
So that brings to mind maybe a different process. And this may not be allowed because of transparency, but a number of the advisory boards that I have served on in the past have had nominating committees where there was a small group of people that their role is to identify people who want to be in that role and then propose that slate of candidates for vote. Is that a possibility? The thing that I have seen that works so well with that is that the slate of candidates usually, I mean, obviously, have been vetted and have agreed that they want to take on the responsibility. They know exactly the amount of time or the amount of things that they're going to have to do in that role. And it typically serves to, to work better from the standpoint of longevity and uh, obligation.
We could do that too.
Well, and then if you have a nominating committee, then could you do the voting by email, such as the way Peter suggested? It would be to a committee
Right. So
rather than a serial type of vote.
right. So either way, we'd have to have it as part of the meeting, right? Of these are the nominees that the committee's going to vote on, right? So
Yep.
that way, that part has to be visible.
That
But
makes sense.
I don't see any issue with voting via email that way, if we have a nominating committee or subcommittee or however you want to do that too.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Get some ideas of which we would prefer. We're going to do it verbal this time because we're all here. It's going to be more convenient that way to do this first one verbal. But if we want to change the process, have an idea of what you want that process to be, and send me some language. Like, I want this. I want to see it done this way. And we can present all those at a future LTAC meeting for folks to vote on, right?
Okay, so a secondary question to that then would be on a vice chair, because I completely agree that a vice chair is a necessity. Having served in roles where there is and is not, it can get relatively difficult if the chair isn't present. So, in a case like this, would you have a candidate for chairman and candidate for vice chair, or would your second highest votes automatically be your the vice chair if there was more than one candidate?
Right, that isn't defined. So I'm seeing a bunch of head nods that sounds like it's a good idea. So go ahead and give some verbal comments.
I think it should be your second highest. I agree with that. That seems to work in committees that I've been on as well.
I agree. I think that's a good idea.
I agree as well.
Yeah, I'm on board. Yeah, easy enough.
All right, it sounds like second highest is going to be the preference, unless I hear any dissenting opinions. Hearing none. Okay. Under this section still, breaking it out further to non-voting committee members, and have those positions defined, right? These are all defined positions currently, but this language helps clarify that these are non-voting LTAC committee members. They're me, as the DELAPO or whomever it is chosen. They're all our state agency representatives. For those folks, they're not voting, and then the scribe, also a non-voting member. This section is really just clarifying that they're not voting. I don't think there's going to be any opinions on that because that's how it's currently set up. I'm just moving it to clarify. All right, hearing no more comments for composition. Again, this splits out currently, and it's kind of cleaning up the language a little bit of what they have. Committee consisting of a broad range of individuals from interested parties and environmental laboratories that have a wide range of experience. That is still the case. But we're including in the bylaws the specific types of representatives that you all serve. So scientific advisor and kind of the general number of what kind of focus that's being put on the committee members. Obviously, there's a lot of overlap. Everyone here kind of fits in all the buckets and doesn't really fit in any one specific one perfectly, but this is putting into the bylaws the standing practice that ELAP has for choosing which committee members serve.
A question about that. Should we have a minimum number of members? So it says you have to have 10. What if, 3 people drop out of LTAC? Can we still have LTAC or
Right. So that is,
is that covered? Yeah.
that's covered in a different section. And I'll get to that. I'll circle back on that later. But that's defining what the quorum of members is. So that was a problem where we had not enough LTAC members to meet. The current bylaws also have an issue where because the scribe and DELAPO and all the state agencies are listed as members, those counted as part of a quorum, even though they couldn't vote. So in theory, you could have a group of people who can't vote that make up a quorum of members. But that doesn't really make any sense, right? So the quorum of members is defined as the total number of currently sitting, and that's later in the section. Sorry, I don't remember which one it is. It's the current number of sitting voting members. So that way, if there's 3 people that drop out, the quorum will drop by that respective number. Good comment. Let's see. Let's just jump to that section. Quorum. There we go. Operational procedures. And it's explicitly pointing out to that. This other section here about the government code, only members physically present, that is part of the Bagley-Keene Act that goes into effect in 2026. So members counting towards a quorum are only those physically present. So for all the representatives, it's up further in one of the sections that you're highly encouraged to be in person. Obviously, we have the ability to do remote connections, and we want that to be available where possible, right? Because not everyone's going to be able to make it in person to every one of these meetings. And rather than having nobody here, it'd be nice if you could attend virtually. So. Hearing nothing. So, okay. I'll keep moving on.
Sorry,
Go ahead. No.
If you're virtual, you still vote though, right?
Correct.
Okay.
You still vote. It just won't count as establishing the quorum. So more than half of you have to be here. Or if we're going to hold it somewhere else, we can do that. We just need to know before the meeting starts of where it's going to be. I'm updating the term limits for the members to be 3 years instead of 2 years. And this language was a suggestion the last LTAC meeting, I believe it was from Peter, that's why I'm looking over this way, of pulling language from the T&I committee, pointing to unless the representative holds a substantive role in the committee or in an ongoing activity requires the representative's participation, or where the representative brings a unique expertise to LTAC and there are no other qualified candidates available. So this is like, you're working on something and your term limit is going to expire, but we want to keep you.
Yeah, so I'll add to that. So that works well, having been involved in something very similar. When the standard changed over in T&I from the 2009 to the 2016, the laboratory accreditation expert committee basically was working on that particular standard. So in order to continue the leadership, they did those exact approvals so that the consistency would stay there, because when you're in the middle of something like that, that houses a lot of historical information that's coming with it. And to interrupt that flow can be disruptive to the entire process. So I love the addition of that, because that absolutely allows for constant or continued leadership through a large project or through a thought process or a changeover. Good add.
Great. Good. Glad that's here. Another section that I'm adding is removing the term limits for the state agency representatives. It doesn't really make any sense. They don't vote. And trying to fill Melissa's shoes is going to be difficult when she only has a small team. So we would cycle through the whole team, and then Melissa would be prohibited from serving on LTAC. And I'm just picking on Melissa because she's the longest standing representative here. I don't think that's very confrontational But if anyone has any strong opinions about that, please.
Yeah, so I'm just going to say something in support of that, just from the standpoint of, again, with other committees, the things that we've seen where there's representatives from the government community, on the public, on the private type, the private type committees. What we have found, if you put a term limit on them, then they have to find a replacement, and which is very hard from a government entity. But the other thing that we found is most of them aren't going to continue to serve if they have no interest. It's kind of that self-regulating type thing where most of them aren't going to stay and just take up space if they're not truly interested in being part of the committee. So, I know it's a hard thing to kind of say, but the reality is, most of the folks that participate on these types of things want to be part of the decision-making process for any type of future, regulations or decisions. So I definitely support that one.
Getting a bunch of head nods. If I could get the head nods or thumbs up from virtual attendees too, that's totally okay. Thanks, Sam. The term limit for the chairperson, instead of having an election every year, we should have an election every 2 years. That's the majority of the members' initial term. It makes a little bit more sense to me to have it for a little bit longer period of time than 1 year. We haven't really consistently followed that either. So definitely interested in hearing opinions on this one, though.
Is there a reason that you wouldn't make it 3 years to be consistent with the term limits?
No, I just picked 2. If you want 3, we can do 3.
Well, I'm trying to sort of balance between, doing 2 would mean potentially you would have someone rotating off of their 3-year cycle while they're still 1 year into their chairmanship. And if that person stays on, then great, that works out, no problem. But otherwise, you may end up with this sort of weird skip cycle that you get yourself in if you don't align it to 3 years. Now, granted, that assumes that the voting for the chairperson coincides with the refreshment, if you will, of the committee and a sort of sync schedule. So
that's true. Yeah.
I don't particularly care whether it's 2 years or 3 years. I'm just throwing out the concept.
Anyone else want to hear some opinions?
Do you think it will make a difference on people willing to serve in the chairperson role if it's longer or shorter? Like if a longer term commitment, will that be more difficult to get more people willing to commit to that effort?
I don't know if it really would affect it.
Okay.
Just simply because with the changes being made here, of course, ELTAC has just come through a very interesting time with having to do virtual meetings and some of the things that we've kind of withstood over the past few years. But I can honestly say if changing it to 2 times per year, that being in person, a known and set schedule, I actually think makes that
Right.
easier. So if you're going to
Right.
commit to 3 years, knowing that May and November or right around there, every year that's going to be set, I actually think that's easier to do. So I would be in support of the 3-year.
Okay. With all that uncertainty removed, makes a difference.
I think it does make a difference. I really do, because that way you can, for somebody, a lot of the folks in this room, I know Augustine and Peter, we all travel to other different, to different things, conferences, other types of meetings and stuff. And it's very difficult if we don't know the schedule for things like this to be able to work around it. I'll just go with my most recent. I literally came in from another conference from San Antonio late last night to be here. And it's because of the overlap that made that difficult. So had I had a known schedule for this particular meeting farther in advance, it wouldn't have been quite that difficult. But, having that consistency, I think, will make a lot of difference.
Okay.
So then to gauge interest now, would the preference be 2 years or 3 years?
As Teresa, 3 years.
Yeah, I would say either 1 or 3, but not 2. Sorry, Chris, but
Yeah, I think 1 or 3 just ends up being cleaner.
It's going to be 3 then. Is that all right? And these have a lot of like weird hanging typos and things. They will be cleaned up and gone through legal counsel before the next LTAC meeting, so that way we can have like a vote on these are going to be it. Is this good or not? Okay.
I mean, I guess maybe I would add, if there's a concern over longevity on the 3 years, is it worth including language that the chair, now that we have a vice chair that's getting voted in, that the chairperson can at any point abdicate their role and have the vice chair take over in their place, and then a new vice chair is voted for, so that, it about the concern about, geez, do I really want to sign up for 3 years of this or not? There's a noted exit strategy, I guess, if it becomes a problem. Well, your commitments change, something in life happens, whatever it is. It's not from a succession planning standpoint, it's not the worst idea in the world to have it codified that, it doesn't create a crisis of leadership, if you will, if something happens.
Yeah, just to add to that, that made me think of something else. Just in the ever-changing landscape of the environmental laboratory world and acquisitions and changes and people changing roles and just sheer turnover and those things that happen. I mean, people's roles change, and having a reasonable language for an out for somebody. I mean, obviously you wouldn't want somebody to abuse that and go 6 months into it and say, oh, this ain't for me, but to give somebody a reasonable out so somebody could pass the torch to the vice chair if they needed to. I think that's a great suggestion. Just to ask one more question to you, Chris, about the Bagley-Keene. I mean, do you know what the changes are? Just in a nutshell?
In a nutshell, virtual is okay, but the quorum of members has to be present. If there are people connecting virtually, every vote has to be via roll call, and that's included in here. So that means every vote, Teresa, aye. Augustine, nay. We have to go through everyone verbally. But other than that, it's a bit more flexible in terms of like those types of meetings and being held. But that's the general gist of what's changed. Is mostly around teleconferencing availability.
Okay. So I was talking to Judy about this earlier I think one of the things that we ran into, and if it hasn't changed, it hasn't changed, is sort of the challenges in working in the subcommittees with the rules that are there. So from the too long didn't read standpoint, none of that is changing.
No, yeah, the subcommittees are also held to Bagley-Keene, and you can't have more than a quorum of members on a subcommittee. No, all that stuff's still the same.
That part's fine. I think the communication within the subcommittee was the challenge, if I remember
Yeah,
it.
you have to do all the talking. Yeah, I know. Not my favorite either, but I'm not a legislator, so I don't think that would be a good fit for me, to be honest. Expectations, this part's mostly the same, and it's about the virtual connection, adding it in there. A lot of this was cut just because it's not really what the committee fits. It was written as like you represent this specific area of California, and that doesn't really align with how the landscape has changed over the coming years, so over the past years. So if anyone has any comments on the expectations section, let me know. Right. And then absences and dismissal. We already have an alternate here today, David. Thanks for stepping in, but this lets you know that you can have an alternate, and then if the committee really doesn't like you here, 2/3 of the voting members can kick you out. But most of this has not changed. Sorry, I try. This is very dry, so I'm trying to keep it a little bit lighter. Appointments. This section's really not changing in terms of how the appointments get occur. We're going to try to work internally to make those appointments happen faster, just because that's going to help everyone if we keep the committee full. So we're going to work on that internally and see what we can do to speed that up. Nominating, just adding the vice chairperson. And, oh, I included language of must be willing to serve as the chairperson, vice chairperson. Great. That's basically the same. Oh, here we put it in, shall be conducted during the fall ELTAC meeting by secret ballot. So we'll cut up some pieces of paper and give you all names to write down and put it in a hat and announce it afterwards. The folks online, I think we're going to do it by email. So you're not going to be secret to me, but you'll be secret to the rest of the committee. So we'll do it that way. Just for sake of ease. If anyone has any ideas on how to do this better, with the idea that some people may not be in the physically same room as everyone, I'm open to hearing how best we can do that.
So describe what you think that would look like under this current.
So the folks here in person can write nominations, or sorry, not nominations. We'll do those verbally, but can write votes on a paper, and we'll send it in so that way the committee members don't know which of the committee voted for which person. Right. Yeah. So the committee at large won't know how specifically how everyone voted. Just, I think it's a lot more, you get a lot more engagement when you're not worried about hurting anyone's feelings.
I agree with that.
And it's saying it's going to happen in the fall one, so that'd be the one in November. But we're having one now because we haven't had one in a while. And please, if you hear anyone is wanting to speak online, please just unmute yourself and start talking. That's okay. I will shut up. So the quorum, we talked about this a little bit before. We want members to be physically present, and this is clarifying that the total number of currently appointed representatives count as the number for the quorum. We talked about this before. We're going to have 2 meetings per year, subject to topic-specific meetings, right? If there's something that's very pressing, like if ELAP does more rulemaking, we will definitely want to have a ELTAC session focused solely on that. So that way we have an extra session, we could squeeze it in there in between the 6 months. I put May and November. Those seem to be the most available months out of the year, and they're 6 months apart. November in particular, that second week of November, there's almost always free, right? Who does anything before Thanksgiving? So that will guarantee that we have at least that one meeting where most people will be available. But I am more than happy to adjust these to be any other specific time if you know that this time is particularly good in the year. Just seeing head nods. So I think I did good with May and November.
A question about the additional meetings though. Is that just your control, or can the members
No. The members could request. Yeah.
Okay. I have to describe a mechanism for that.
Sorry, what?
I have to describe a mechanism for requesting another meeting.
I think that's somewhere in here. But if not, I will put a note about how to request additional meetings. Yeah, and for I see a hand in the audience here. We're going to keep public comments to the end, and that way we'll have all of them all at once. So if anyone online watching via webcast has any comments that they want to submit, either verbally, you can ask email, or either verbally, or you just have a written comment you want to submit, email ELAPCA, ELAPCA _ comments at waterboards.ca.gov. We will read out your comment out loud or invite you to the Zoom if you wanted to provide the verbal comment. So please feel free.
So can I make a comment on the schedule?
Yes.
Okay, so, and I know this really shouldn't matter, except we do have representation, and folks that are ACIO members that are on this committee. Now, this year, their annual meeting is the first week of November, which means that the second week of November obviously is free. The only thing that I would ask is that we're mindful of how that we choose that November date, because the ACIL, because of the venues and the fact that they move it around, it's very hard for them to stay with a date. So if we can just kind of be mindful of that coordination is probably the best way to say it, because right around that same time frame is also what they look at. Just a suggestion.
Amazing. That's super helpful. Thanks. I will keep that in there. I'll figure out how to put that in there as well. I've put them all, well, actually, no, that language is staying. All ELTAC meetings are going to reside here in Sacramento. I am more than open to moving them if you all have a spot that you want to host. It's going to be definitely easiest for ELAP's purpose to have this room set up, or this room or one of the rooms here in Sacramento set up for webcast. We have a whole AV team. Thank you so much, you all working and watching us in the background all day today. But it's easiest for us to set it up here. But if you have a specific spot that you have and you want to set up, we can definitely move meetings around, but we need way advanced notice to be able to do that. So I'm leaving it open for meetings to schedule to occur at another location. We have to invite the public in as well, right? We can't have it at somebody's house and close it off from the world. So, and then this remote meeting attendance, that's from Bagley Keene about if the power goes out or whatever, the meeting has to pause if there's members that are connected remotely. So. Same with the 48-hour notification for connecting remotely. That's also Bagley Keene. And then the time must be available to the public to provide comments on each agenda item. That's a Bagley Keene rule that isn't in here, but should be. So adding that as well. Bylaws, I'm just clarifying that the bylaws changes can be proposed by anyone. However, the vote occurs with the representatives, as is consistent with all the other voting requirements. So, and then this deputy director reserves right to make amendments to these bylaws without the consent. That's if something happens and the deputy director of the Division of Drinking Water needs, nope, we have to do it this way for some reason, right? And that could be, oh, the law has changed, so we have to make an amendment to that. So, any comments? All right, hearing none, seeing none online. Recommendations, this is a section that was already there, but it needed some more specificity to what it is and what it is used for. So this is what Erica had mentioned earlier on what could the committee do. This, I think, is a very valuable tool that hasn't been used in a long time. Of you guys can create guidance documents that ELAP cannot, right? There are some things that me personally would love to say that everyone must do it this way, but that's not the rule, and doing so might be problematic for us as a program to do. But if you all want to provide, hey, we think industry practice should be this, like I have no problem posting that on our website saying this is what ELTAC says to do, right? That doesn't make it a rule. It makes this is what ELTAC should do. But this recommendation section is great. This language, recommendations must be submitted in writing. That's the same. But the we want it to be available to the public, so we need it in advance to be able for, if you guys are going to vote on it, we need it available to the public in advance so we can post a copy online and anyone can view. So that way the public has a chance to provide comments if they need to, right? So I think this is a good tool. I've done my best to clean this up and make it more structured in terms of like what it is and how you guys do it. But I'm definitely willing to change anything in here. And if any of you have any opinions on it. And then this response that ELAP needs to provide for 30 days after you give it to us, that's still from the original text. So you give us a recommendation and ELAP needs to respond to it. I think that's still definitely valid.
My only comment is I think that the addition of the clarification language will make it a more used option. So I think that honestly, I think all of the additions to this document have served to make it more clear and more conducive to participation and things such as that. I mean, it's everything that I've seen that you've put in here so far has all been positive, good additions. So yeah, I really do like this one, especially on the recommendations.
Great. I have been working on it for a while, so it's good to have some positive feedback. We have voting on agenda items. A couple of these changes are from Bagley Keene. A couple of them are from my idea of like what does a consensus mean, right? Ideally, we'd like every recommendation to be 100% unanimous vote, but realistically, that is not ever going to happen. At any committee, I don't know of any committee that requires unanimous agreement to move anything through. So it's a goal to reach the consensus, and I'm leaving it open for if there's a first round of votes and we get no's, let's talk about why, right? No, because this, we need to change this section. And sometimes you might just be overruled, and that's okay. ELAP may request no votes to be included as additional information when you're providing it. So like, hey, I vote no, I'm really strongly opposed because of, and if it's a recommendation, like every lab needs to use this specific brand of mop, right? No, because this, we'd want that included with the recommendation too. So I think that'd be valuable to have there. But again, willing to change anything that you all have here.
So a little bit like a dissenting opinion from the Supreme Court.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Where it's understood why people voted no, right? Because if we see a vote and it's like a quorum of members, so 1/2 plus 1 voted one way and then everyone else voted a different way, be nice to know for historical context why everyone voted that other way.
Seems like a good addition.
All right, hearing nothing, I'm gonna keep moving on. We're gonna finish this agenda item and then we'll take a break for lunch. The lunch will be about an hour and we'll put on the screen when it goes from and to, and then we'll pick up with the rest of the agenda when we come back. So I only have 2 pages left, so we should be able to get through that pretty quickly. For the subcommittees, most of this language is clarifying from Bagley Keene, and the provision in here is you can't have alternates on the subcommittee. The subcommittee is designed to be a smaller group of people talking about a specific topic that goes back to ELTAC for ELTAC to do something with. So it doesn't really make sense to have alternates and trying to balance all that out, keep that in track, because I don't think that will be beneficial for the subcommittee to function or for ELAP to track on that end.
I have a clarifying question, I guess. So clearly stated and understood from a maximum perspective, can't have more than half the folks on it. Is there a minimum? I heard someone generously say a subcommittee of 1 to Augustine earlier today. Can there actually be a subcommittee of 1 ELTAC member?
Let's see. I don't know. I don't think I put a minimum in here, but I think. Oh, go ahead.
Augustine is a is a work group, which is a different thing. That
Oh,
he's our one person work group.
I'm poking some fun. I'm not picking on it
Okay.
necessarily.
Well, he's been great, but we'll always recruit for more too, I guess. But yeah, that's a fair
Yeah.
question.
No, there's no minimum stated here. So
Okay.
No, but there is a question, a clarifying question that I have on that. So it says subcommittee members shall be confirmed by the DELAPO. Membership on subcommittees may include members of the public. However, there must be a minimum of at least one representative. So there
Right.
has to be a member of at least one LTAC person.
well, yeah, because if you make a subcommittee, that doesn't really make any sense to have nobody from ELTAC on it.
Right. But is there anything special about members of the public being on? Except for the fact that everybody has to follow Bagley King.
Right. Everyone's got to follow Bagley Keene, but no, it doesn't necessarily matter.
Okay.
If you want to set a maximum here, we can, but there's got to be. So to Peter's question, maybe it's got to have at least one representative, but do we want a minimum number of total members for the subcommittee?
No, I'm not advocating for a minimum. And a follow-up to Judy's question if you include members of the public, they're also beholden to the Bagley Keene. Okay.
So I looked at the one representative as being the minimum, is what I looked at. Minimum
Right.
one. So it's not two, you can't have more than this, but you can't have less than that. It's basically what we were looking for, what I was looking for.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. But the half doesn't apply to public members. So that number doesn't apply to that.
Right. So any number of public members could be on the subcommittee,
Fair
but we can't have more than half of the LTAC committee on the subcommittee, voting members.
And the
Go ahead.
subcommittee can't consist exclusively of members of the public. That's
Right.
what that last
Yes.
piece looks like.
Yes. Because again, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense.
Sure.
But it could be, the subcommittee could just be you, Melissa, and then a bunch of members of the public, if you really wanted it to be that way. I don't see a problem with that.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind.
Good comments, but I don't think I'm going to change anything based on anything that we've discussed, unless somebody corrects me. Okay, hearing none. No, so work groups aren't included in the thing, and work groups aren't a formal action from LTAC. So if we vote on it, it's a subcommittee. If you're like, hey, I want interested parties to come be part of this, that's a work group. And that'd be talking about something outside of what the committee's talking about as a whole.
Right. And the part where Bagley King gets ultimately satisfied is when we make a formal proposal
Correct.
to the
Yeah.
board.
So that work group wouldn't be able to formally propose a recommendation unless they're bringing it as a member of the public. Hey, I want LTAC to do this. Right. For regulations, it's mostly cleanup language here. We want anything you guys produce regulatory wise, we want to include that in the rulemaking package if it's on time. And you can submit it as a formal comment to regulations, anything like that. But when it comes time to rulemaking, if you all aren't submitting something official, then you can still provide your public comment, but just on behalf of yourself, right? And then minutes, I have cut a lot of the minutes because now we do webcasts and we have recordings and we can post those online. And that makes way more sense to have the whole recording posted online so people can actually listen and watch and flip through the presentations and things like that as they're delivered rather than just a weird summary of minutes. Voting, if we do any voting, we will include that as something separate, right? We want to have that, but and if for whatever reason the recording gets corrupted, then we'll put minutes online, right? So that way there's notes. Go ahead.
Yeah, just curious, does the recording need to comply with ADA, meaning that you can have an option to read it?
I'm very familiar with them, but I'm not like 100% familiar. So I don't know if it's required to have captions for the whole video. I don't think it is. Yeah. But yeah, I know that that is one of the headaches that of posting things online is yes. Yeah. But I don't think it does.
Will we potentially just be able to provide a transcription along with the recording?
Maybe we're not going to hire court reporters for all this to give like the official transcription like you do with the rulemaking packages. You have a court
Does Zoom
reporter.
come?
Yeah, Zoom's transcribing it right now, and
Yeah.
we can download it afterwards. But you know, we don't know how accurate that is because
Gotcha.
They come with some kind of AI assistant,
right,
right?
yeah, yeah,
You can just do all the note taking for you.
right, yeah. So that it might come with that too, but I don't know. I'll follow up on that and we'll see. We'll see how this one works out in terms of what it looks like. It might be intelligible or unintelligible.
I think you'll find the minutes that get produced from the AI assistants now are very accurate,
good.
almost scarily accurate.
Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. It actually will cut out like unneeded conversation as well.
Amazing. Pretty cool. All right. Well, I don't hear anything else. So if there's any other general comments, we can add them here. But so the next meeting, I will come back with a cleaned up version of this. It'll be done and finalized. It'll have gone through legal review to make sure I'm not making up rules about Bagley Keene. And then I will propose it as a vote for the ELTAC members. And we'll have any ability for other comments. I'm going to look over to see if there's any public comments. And I know Allison had one. So I'll ask you to come up and speak to a mic, or we can bring a mic for you. Oh, Judy already covered it. Okay, so no more public comments. Yeah, yeah. Speaking on the same way. Go ahead, Kim. Right. Yes. So the next draft before the next meeting where we have a vote on it, it'll be finalized. It'll be posted. Hey, this is what the committee is going to vote on. That way, everyone can see it well in advance. It'll be part of the noticing that comes out in November, unless we decide otherwise later today. Okay. I think that wraps it up for this item, unless anyone has any topics. And looking over to see if, okay. Not on this topic. Okay, great. Great. So with that, I think we're going to break for lunch here. We'll give ourselves about an hour and 15 minutes. Sound good? Come back at 1:30. Yeah. Okay, so great. So we'll put that up on the webcast. We'll put a little slide up that's notifying when we're coming back. So we'll come back at around 1:30. For those members attending virtually, I'll see you back. You can either hang in the Zoom thing or jump back in at later period. For folks in person, we have a little cheat sheet of some nearby restaurants. If y'all want to go for a walk, they're all with it pretty close. And 1:30. Yeah. And then we'll start with agenda topic number 5, which is the tariffs and supply chain discussion. I'm hoping that's going to be fruitful after lunch. Great. All right, we're going to call the meeting back to order here. I hope everyone had a great lunch for those attending virtually. Hope your lunch was as fun as the ones here. Sounds like everyone had a good time. Uh, we're going to move on to agenda topic number 5, which is an open discussion about tariffs and supply chain issues affecting ELAP laboratories. ELAP wanted to bring this agenda to bring an emerging issue to the attention of the committee, one that could significantly impact laboratories across California and the United States. As you know, there are new federal tariffs that are being imposed on a range of products imported from other countries. While the full effects are still unfolding, we're hearing early concerns about potential disruptions in the laboratory supply chain. These disruptions could affect everything from consumables and reagents to replacement parts and routine instrument maintenance. We're bringing this to the committee now, not because there's panic, but because there's a window of time to prepare and collaborate. This is a critical opportunity for the laboratory community to start talking about how we can support each other and raise awareness with our state agency partners who require and depend on timely and accurate monitoring data. It's important to remember that at the end of the day, it's the regulated entities who are required to use accredited laboratories to submit monitoring reports to comply with permits, policies, orders, statutes, and regulations. If a lab faces delay or disruptions, that has downstream impacts on compliance and public health protection. You might be thinking, this doesn't affect me, my supplies are stocked and my instruments are fine. But the real question is what happens when you place in your next order and or your instrument needs a repair and the part is just on back order forever or simply not available? What's the backup plan? How long can your lab sustain an extended delay? This isn't here to sound an alarm, but we want to have a real conversation. The forum like this exists so we can have proactive, solution-oriented discussions. So let's use it and talk about what we're seeing, what we're anticipating, and how we can ensure monitoring infrastructure remains strong despite global supply chain pressures. I really appreciate you all bringing something to the table here, and I'm looking forward to hearing your thoughts. And with that, I'll open it to whomever wants to start.
Yeah, so we've seen supply chain issues and tariffs, both real and not. So we have noticed some things that vendors are charging a straight up fee because of tariffs, quote unquote tariffs. But these are for products that were shipped before the tariffs went in place. So we've been able to successfully argue a lot of these, but I think the tariffs in a permanent sense are coming. So in our lab, we've tried to stock up for supplies where we can. I mean, we don't have a huge facility, so we can't order, 10,000 cases of solvent or whatever it is. But we've been able to stock up on some things that we know come from overseas. Now, we do have vendors, we work very closely with our vendors that are pivoting and sourcing from places like Vietnam instead of China for certain consumables. So we are working with those vendors to see what they can do. And from our perspective, we don't enter into contracts where we can only use vendor. So it keeps our options open. So we'll talk to our vendor and say, hey, if you don't have this product, who does? And we maintain a list of vendors. I think like most labs, it's a requirement, right? To do that, but we do maintain a list of vendors and backups for the backups to kind of find the person who can give it to us for the best price. Now, the issue that we see is instrument parts. There's not a lot of like there. For example, a lot of our HPLC components come from Germany. There's I think a 25% tariff on those, and the instruments themselves are more expensive. So we do have those costs that we cannot, we just can't find a way around them. And we haven't seen, I don't know about the folks in ELTAC, but we haven't seen issues with supply chain problems. Like people have the products, they're just way more expensive now. In a business like ours where the margins are very thin and we have long-term contracts, it puts us in a bind where we have to still provide the service to our customers for that price and just eat the cost internally. So if there's a way to have like the regulators maybe encourage or tell these, the data users, say, hey, look, these things are going to get more expensive. Be okay with that, which they won't be. Nobody likes prices increases. But if we can pass those costs along, then it won't be as disruptive. And I think a lab like ours, we can weather a little bit of a storm, but there are a lot of small labs that are ELAP accredited that are going to struggle. for sure that, you know, might have a harder time with those kind of 25% increases.
Piggyback off of what Augustine said is that a lot of what's causing the problem right now is the uncertainty. If it was put in flat and we know what we're dealing with, it's a lot easier for the labs, and especially, I imagine this is going to be very difficult for the smaller labs, is to forecast. Because you can't set pricing if you don't know if your increase is going to be 3% or 200%. And unfortunately, what we're seeing is a lot of volatility in that. And as Augustine mentioned, we did a survey from our distributors, from our vendors. And they said of the 75 vendors that we use through one of our distributors, 50 of those were adding a tariff surcharge that was going to be the amount of the tariff and would only exist for the length of that, so they could take it off. The other 25 vendors just put in a price increase. And we anticipate that price increase is not going to go down. So, and this affects more than just consumables and instrumentation. It also affects, for us, for example, we have a sampling crew. So anytime, any laboratories that have sampling teams that have automobiles and all of this, anything with rubber, anything with automotive parts is going to see a significant increase in price. As well as some of the supply chain disruptions. We've seen a slight uptick in back orders, but from the data that's out there for the companies that aren't shipping or who delayed shipping until right now, there's a moratorium on tariffs, but they're supposed to come back again. A lot of companies stockpiled overseas, and then the minute they had a chance to bring it in, they came to bring it in, but if it comes back again, they're going to stop shipping again. So we've seen a couple of items that are out 2-3 months. These are standards. So now if we don't have a standard, you can't calibrate. So I think some of the things that would be helpful that we could do is, again, potentially add in more areas for price increases, as hard as that is, and as much as no one likes that, because this is such a small, tight margin business, that a significant increase in the cost of doing business will have a negative impact, especially on the accessibility, if we start to lose these smaller labs. Additionally, just trying to encourage more teamwork across the industry if things do become scarce. The additional issue, which is sort of tariff related but not, is that because of the increase in oil production, if we lose if the refineries start shutting down in Texas and so forth, we're going to start seeing shortages in the solvents again. And so combine that with now some of the filtration materials used to make those solvents, all of those are going up in the supply chain. So even if it's made in the US, there's a lot of supply chain things that are maybe additionally passed on to us. From different analyses that I've read, the true impact won't be felt to July. So we're kind of in this weird place right now where things are changing, but they're literally changing by the day. We were assured by Agilent that they weren't increasing their prices because they were made in the US. And this morning I got an email saying, we're going to have an increase on our instruments. And I asked the percentage and they said, we haven't determined it yet. So as of July 1, now everything from Agilent, which is made in the US, is going to go up. And then Bruker, Metrome, all of those, that's 25%.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you guys 100%. And even for us, it also goes into waste disposal too. For us, we have a lot of waste that we off haul. We've increased that from quarterly to monthly for pickups, but I've seen those increase just in waste disposal on our end too. Even that's gone up. So those people are having a harder time trying to find where to take the waste to. So those people are, instead of maybe going to one vendor, now they have to go to their backup and their backup. So even those landfills are having issues as well. And I had mercury on site for a long time for COD vials because my waste hauler couldn't find a place to take them. I ended up having another place take them, cost me a lot more, probably $4,000 more, but I couldn't have it just sitting at my facility either. I had to get it off hauled. So it definitely goes beyond consumables, instruments, it goes to everything. So yeah, we've been slowly increasing pricing, but trying not to. But yeah, I agree with you guys 100%.
And I think more communication, as long as if we can maybe create some sort of framework which to report when we see or hear about these increases, because it's also parsing between which are real, which are truly because someone's importing something and it's gone up and they're just trying to recoup their costs like the rest of us, or, you know, this is also opportunity, right? So there may be distributors and manufacturers who are going to increase price even if they're not seeing a significant increase in their supply chain. So just kind of understand how we can best strategically purchase to minimize that impact.
Yeah, so I'm gonna jump in and add something there. So one of the things, most recently, I had the opportunity to talk with a number of our suppliers, and one of the things that you pointed out was one of the things that was told to me regarding a tariff charge, and in some cases with no purpose behind it, with no no definable reason as to why it's on there. So to your point, I hate to use the term gouging. That's the term I used when I said, oh, so they're gouging. So the unfortunate thing is with some of the large distributors, their product lines, some things are suffering from tariffs and some aren't. But it's no different than what we see as a laboratory. Some of our supplies are subject to, and some of them are not. We actually have one supplier that truly does manufacture all of their stuff in the U.S. Their materials are U.S. based. The manufacturing is U.S. based, except for 2%, and 2% of their manufacture our supplies come from the UK. So they absolutely have said we are unaffected by the tariffs. So that part of it is one piece. But when you look at the distributors, some of their things are and some of them aren't. So the problem I think with the distributors is they can't really get a handle on what they're seeing and what the overall effect is. So in some cases, for lack of a better way to say it, I think they're just imposing something across the board because they can't predict what's going to happen. And I think that's unfortunate. And I think it creates quite a disservice to the laboratories because at the end of the day, to somebody else's point about using a primary supplier and then now having to use backup suppliers, unfortunately, you're going to have to vet what that backup is doing versus what your primary is doing because one of them may be being more diligent than the other. And that is the unfortunate thing. One of the other suppliers that we have out there, whoever brought up standards, standards sitting, they went ahead and as soon as the first breath of tariff came out, they bought ahead and they actually have leased a warehouse to have a large amount of materials so that they're set for a year based on what their previous year and year before sales are. So they did the year over year and made a good guess. And of course, that puts them at a deficit from the standpoint of their debt, but it also allows them to continue to treat their customers the same way, which alleviates having to put more thought and labor and whatnot into trying to figure their way around it. So they've bought themselves some time to plan ahead. So to me, that was the best scenario that I heard. But to somebody else's point about instrumentation, I also heard that there are instruments right now sitting in containers floating around out there not being unloaded because they don't know what to do yet when it comes to the tariffs. So there is a whole lot of moving parts to this. Some of it's verifiable and true, and some of it leaves a lot to think about. And I think your biggest suppliers and your most credible suppliers are the ones that you have to have the conversation with and have to push on right now. Because at the end of the day, they're the ones that are supplying majority of us. I mean, we all know who they are. And if they're not behaving like they're supposed to, I think it takes us as an industry to keep them accountable. And that's truly the way I feel because it is nebulous enough right now that we can't really predict what's real and what's supposed and what's not.
What I have noticed is that if you do engage with the instrument, at least some of them, with the instrument suppliers, some of the ones that are located overseas are strategically thinking about this. I know for us, Bruker let me know this morning that they were shipping an item that we were interested in that we haven't purchased yet to the US. So just proactively, even if we don't buy it, we don't have to, but that it will be here during that moratorium period. So I think there's some ways that we can work around it. But my main concern right now is Agilent, because they are such a huge supplier to our entire industry. And the story we were getting all along is we're not raising prices, everything's fine, we're not raising prices, and now their prices are going up. So just potentially, we may consider approaching them individually and saying, could you waive this price increase just for the environmental industry? No, we're in a different margin. We're not a pharmaceutical company. We're not, making massive profits off of this. And we are loyal customers, but we're not a huge part of their market share either. So at a point where maybe we could make certain agreements, because at least a few companies have specifically waived tariffs for environmental only. It gets some notifications of that. Some Canadian companies that we use for standards had sent out some notifications saying, we understand this is there, we're going to eat it for you guys, but just this industry, because they understood the margins.
Well, I think it's been said more than once. I know it was said by one of the main ICP suppliers that we all have used, that environmental is not the biggest part of their business. And I mean, as much as I hate to say that out loud because they said it to us, we've reverberated that back to them every time there's been some kind of issue. Oh, yeah, that's right. We're not the biggest part of your business. But unfortunately, what you just said is correct. The margins are not the same for the other types of laboratories. And I envision that we're not the biggest part of Agilent's market. And so, and with that being the case, I think what you're saying and what you're bringing up, I think is absolutely fair. And I think as an industry, I don't think there's a winner in this. I don't think if one of my competitors, goes to Agilent and gets a better deal, I don't think anybody's winning in that. I think that everybody needs to have the same ask to Agilent. I think it needs to be, give us a break. I mean, I'll just be honest with you. ACIL, when we go forth to take on EPA or regulations or things such as that, we're doing it for the industry. We're not doing it to benefit just my lab or just your lab or Allison's lab or yeah, that is Allison's lab, but anyway, or Augustin's lab or whoever, we're doing it to benefit the industry. So in this particular case, I think it's one of those things where the conversation has to kind of expand beyond where we are and make sure that the other laboratories are approaching these suppliers with that same ask. I mean, I know that that'll be my takeaway today when I go back to our purchasing team. Because I think if Agilent hears it enough, I mean, at some point you have to listen. So that's just my thoughts on that.
And when we've pushed so far on other,
Go ahead.
go ahead if they want to.
Oh, sorry. She can go ahead. I think both of us spoke at the same time.
Okay, what I was just the experience that I've had so far with trying to negotiate or work is that the companies I've worked with so far have been very understanding and very willing to work with us. I think they understand the importance of this industry, they understand the margins of this industry, and we're not their main profit sector. So I think they'd rather have us still be around than the alternative. So I do think that if we all potentially, I was thinking maybe some sort of letter we could put together or something as, we can get labs and maybe as ACIL. I don't know.
You just read my mind. I was just thinking that from an ACIL perspective.
Because I really do think these companies want to retain us,
Agree.
Laguna, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'm going to bring a different perspective from a municipal laboratory and what we are dealing with. We haven't seen an across the board increase on all of the items, of course. Some of them have specifically said that there's going to be, they have separate line items saying they have a 4% increase or a 3% increase. Some others say we have a certain 5% increase across the board. And some others have told us that there is a surcharge, but they don't project what percentage percentage of increase. Sadly enough, we've also been hit with stuff that we probably get from companies that are especially standards that we try to acquire from Canada. We are hit with a 25% tariff. But anyways, the problem now for municipal labs is that where do we get the extra padding for this budget? We cannot pass the cost along to clients. So, and also we plan for a budget so well in advance of the fiscal year that our budget for the next year is already being blocked. Now, there is no way to, there is a minimal area where you have to kind of realign some of the other items to bring in more money into the budget. And again, the situation here is that when you bring in the money, you're not able to exactly, at least approximately project how much is it going to is the tariff going to impact it? So the state, it's kind of in a very fluid state. The other thing is also because we haven't seen the full impact of the budget, full impact of the tariff. It is also very kind of, I wouldn't say any kind of approximation or estimation seems like we'll have an issue or problem with it. The other problem also, like municipal labs like mine might face, is we don't have a designated purchasing person who's looking at all these different costs and cost increases and trying to tally it. So that is another problem that we have. In terms of supply chain, again, we haven't seen the full impact of it. The other thing is as to buying in bulk is these standards have very short expiry dates. So I don't see the benefit to buying in bulk and saving it up. At least for our lab, it doesn't work. Is it time consuming considering all these factors? Yes, it is. And also with TNI playing a major role, it's not only the expiry dates, but moving to an alternate vendor, are we comfortable? Did we do the study to make sure that we can replace one standard with another standard from a different vendor? How comfortable are the analysts using it? How comfortable is the lab? Is the study, a parallel study being done? Everything is time consuming and is expensive. I would like to understand from other municipal labs what their plans are for this. If anybody could have any inputs on that.
Yeah, I can probably speak of municipal lab too. We haven't seen much of the supply chain issue, but obviously the vendor has imposed a tariff surcharge. So we've seen an increase of the supply cost for sure. But what we've been doing is I think we look into a sustainability or reusing some of the plastic. Obviously, we know that contaminations, we have to keep that in mind when we talk about reusing plastic or we activated some of the liners, and we have to find a way to make sure there's no cross contamination. But at least like we educate our staff through My Green Lab certification program that they're based in San Diego, and they basically it's a change in culture of how we conduct testing and try to, I guess, we use a little bit more or reduce some of the plastic uses, but it's a cultural shift, and we've been doing that for the last few months to a year just to shift the culture of minimizing some of the plastics uses. And it's been okay, but obviously we cannot completely eliminate some of the supply, like Agilent supply. I don't think it will be extremely challenging. But at least we do the best we can to kind of minimize the impact. And also, I think nowadays we can probably share some information in some of the lab community, like CWA lab committee in Southern California. We have the municipal lab committee too. We can probably share information where we get the supply from, right? So at least we can help out each other as a lab community as a whole.
I think we are still too early to say how much the impact is for municipal labs. We definitely are starting to notice. So the whole point here is it's going to take us a few more months to understand the full impact of it.
Speaking from another municipal lab standpoint, our main issue with supply chain has been with field, like hawk equipment and stuff like that. They've been really short on things. And we've been doing what you were saying about kind of stocking up ahead of time so that we have, because a lot of those things last a long time, these chem keys and stuff like that. But one of the issues regarding instrumentation, I'm in the market for a new ICP-MS right now. And I was talking to my vendor, he was visiting me yesterday, and he said it's going to be a 14% increase. And how I'm dancing around that is we're getting additional trainings. You know, they come with one training, and we're going to get 3 now. We're going to get an extension on the warranty. We're going to get a couple more years. You know, stuff that doesn't really cost them anything, that's not affected by tariffs and whatnot. It's more services, I guess, lack of a better way of putting it. And that's as far as instrumentation, that's the only thing I've encountered so far, and that's how we're dancing around it.
I can speak a bit from sort of the state level. I've just purchased a couple of instruments from Agilent, and I think we haven't seen that yet. So I think that was prior to what you heard like this week or last week. But I did see tariffs being on some of the other equipment that we're purchasing. So I'm starting to see that trickle down to that. One of the things that, and I'm not sure if the rest of the laboratories here are aware of the NASPO contract, which the state utilizes. And it's one of these contracts that's being I guess, negotiated in terms of pricing, and the participating suppliers include Fisher, VWR, and Thomas. And that's been sort of negotiated in terms of the pricing for a lot of the products that they carry. And so, and these are like multi-state contract. And so California adapts that. And so we relied on pretty much Fisher and VWR as our main supplies for a lot of supplies and everything because of the procurement requirements through the state, which makes it really difficult to get anything. So we mostly relied on that. I have not seen, I don't know with the tariffs how that's going to affect the NASPO contract. But if it doesn't, then we should be able to kind of keep the pricing for those products that's already been negotiated. It's been capped within, you know, the within the time frame of that particular contract. I don't know if that, again, what the state that will be, and maybe that's something that if you're not aware of, maybe able to explore that. The other one is also the state also has state contracts with air gas that also cap prices, at least with air gas, and I think other specialty gas suppliers like Matheson. And so those prices been sort of set, and they're probably not going to raise it until the next calendar year. So if you are able to kind of tap into that, that's something to look into as well. But again, I don't know because of this huge, you know, national shift with the tariffs that everything will be raised. And so that's the question that needs to be determined. But if not, those prices should stay where they are because that's under, you know, a contractual agreement.
My lab currently has the NASPO contract, and that's one of the reasons that we are not able to exactly project how much across the board it's going to increase and how much across the board we need to allocate the budget for, because we have to rely on this NASPO contract as well as individual vendors for purchase. And yeah, there is no uniformity across the board. The other thing about is we use air gas, and we've been every year pretty much we get the information from Airgas in terms of price increase, although we go by 3-year contracts with Airgas. That's my 2 cents regarding that.
All right, this has been really good. I have a couple of notes, and I want to kind of re-summarize what folks have been saying in terms of what laboratories can do to help mitigate their own impacts. And feel free to jump in if you hear something that I'm saying that sounds good. The first one that stands out to me largest is collaborate early. So find other laboratories nearby, work together, and make sure you and your near neighbors have supplies ready. That could be your subcontracting labs, things like that. But to communicate with them early and often to make sure that you're keeping together and working together. On that effect, you could also both push on your largest vendors to help communicate, and that seems to, at least from members here, seems to work well if you're able to communicate with the vendors that you're using in terms of making sure your costs are understood. James had great example of what you could do if you still need to increase that cost is get a little bit more training or get a little bit longer contract service time, things like that, that help offset that cost just a little bit. I did hear that there was some sort of communication framework needed to that effect. And with all of these things here, ELAP's definitely going to take these back and talk up chain, kind of explain what we're hearing on our end to see where we can move forward and what we can do with next. And we'll definitely take that back. And it sounds like, based on everything I'm hearing with how much uncertainty that's here, that this would be a good item to retain for the next ELTAC meeting. Hearing a lot of head nods. So I think I did a pretty good summary there. But if folks want to add some more, please jump in.
Is this, and this may be a question for Erica too, but is this something that you think would be worthwhile to have as an informational item at one of the State Water Board meetings? Or
Yeah,
would there be any desire to have that?
I would certainly, I could imagine that this would be useful for people to understand how, this kind of comes into into this aspect of of our environmental work as well, because I'm not sure that very many people would realize how much is trickling into this world. So yeah, I agree. Melissa, I'd definitely be happy to support that in any way. And maybe if others agree that this seems like something we should be elevating, within, at
Right.
our board level, I think, we have 2 people here happy to help do that.
Would that, I mean, for the labs, I guess, would that be helpful to help elevate this attention-wise?
I mean, I think there's some value in it. I think the other piece that sort of needs to be understood, and Augustine put this point out early, a lot of agencies, whether at the state level or municipal level, operate on longer term fixed fee contracts, and those may not be acceptable to the commercial community anymore. Or there's going to have to be exceptions made within those contracts to allow changes in pricing. I'm pretty sure it's uniformly understood around the table. Ain't none of us making 50 or 60% earnings on the work that we're doing. And so, consumables comprise, it's probably different for your guys' labs than it is for mine as a biology, but it comprises not a small percentage of your overall cost basis in doing the work, especially the capital expense on instrumentation. And so inevitably there has to be understanding and longevity and awareness from municipalities that are issuing contracts to commercial labs that this is going to become a challenge, especially if the volatility continues and swings in such wide swaths, we'll call it, because we're not vacillating between 10 or 15%. We're vacillating between 0 and 100 and what's the record so far? 45, somewhere around there. So, you know, I mean, I think there's a number of issues that potentially need to be elevated from an awareness standpoint, you know, at the state board and at the agency level, at least from the contract private side of the community.
I mean, I agree with all that. I think having a little bit of visibility and awareness at the board level and even like the regional boards would help. A lot of times we'll go to our customers and say, hey, this isn't feasible for whatever reason. And they don't care, right? Because their engineer, their district engineer, the regional board says, no, I have to do this. And there's no communication, there's no possibility for communication. So having that be something that they're aware of would help, I think, the lab community a lot. At least start the conversation and have them have that as something they're aware of.
Well, and from the agency standpoint, you know, I mean, for municipal labs and state-run labs, I mean, you know, there have been a couple of statewide contracts on consumables or various things that have been mentioned. I mean, you know, similar to the world on the commercial side, that size has a significant amount of bargaining power. Collectively, you as agencies amongst yourselves and at the state level, in here in the state of California, the, what are we, fourth largest economy at this point? You probably have a fair amount of bargaining power if you all get together yourselves amongst those that have in-house smaller municipal labs, and similar to, you know, a PACE advocating through an ACIL for smaller commercial labs in LA County or in Orange County sanitation, you know, amongst the larger municipal agencies can help the smaller ones with the suppliers to be able to barter for better pricing.
Yeah, these are all great points, and yeah, good idea, Melissa. I think we should just we'll just touch base afterwards and find you know, see how we can support this and make sure we're promoting the awareness and start talking about what, you know, what would the response look like in terms of, you know, recognizing that this is going to be a challenge.
Right.
I think that at the state level, with a lot of these contracts, the department that we would have to go through is the Department of General Services, DGS. So they're the one who negotiates all of the state contracts and leverage agreements and such.
Good point. Great.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
This has been a really good discussion. I have some takeaways. I'm probably going to be working with the internal water board folks and really all the state agency representatives to see what we can do. I might reach out to individual members, or if you're listening on the webcast, any members, particularly interested members of the public, we might ask, depending on what path our executive staff wants to go with this, for some additional support or information or that kind of thing to help leverage some awareness. So, but either way, we will be circling back at the next ELTAC meeting about this topic again. Anyone have any other comments or concerns that they want to share regarding this topic? Otherwise, I'm going to table it and then we'll move on to another one. Oh, sorry. Let me look over. Thank you. For public comments on this topic. Got one? Oh. Let's get her a microphone.
Okay. Okay. Yes, please, Allison.
Come sit.
So I apologize because I probably didn't craft the question properly. However, my only other comment was to Calvin's point, can ELTAC start the communication, and does it have to be formalized with a letter to organizations such as CASA, CWEA, the types of organizations that the municipal and public agency laboratories actually, participate in. Much as we will take this back to ACIL, how do we broaden the conversation? But you've all addressed it. My question was, should there be an official letter?
That's a very good question. I'll pass it back to the committee for discussion.
Okay, so for clarification, an official letter from the ELTAC? Okay.
And I'm sure that didn't get caught up, but the comment was ELAP probably can't send that letter. ELTAC could definitely send that letter. So in that regard, if you want to bring forward other committees, I know everyone here has a little bit of other representation everywhere else, ACIL, CWEA. Do you want to bring that back to those groups and bring those letters and have ELTAC collate all those letters together in one kind of larger letter?
I would like to see us coordinate what the goal of that letter would be so that the message, when it's received, is the same. And because here's what I envision. I mean, and this does happen. I'm not going to say frequently, but it does happen where ACIL or even EMC, the Environmental Monitoring Coalition, or somebody will put something out, and inevitably what happens is it gets passed from one organization to the next, to the next, to the next. And, ideally, if that's what we want to see happen here, we want to see this get passed around, and we want to see it get publicized, and we want to see it get put in places, maybe on LinkedIn or something like that. Because what happens in those circumstances is our suppliers are very active on the professional social media, if you will, LinkedIn and things such as that. And I think that if the messaging is the same and there's multiple messages out there, I think that there's a lot of power in that. That's the way to bring the communities together without having to have them all in the same room. And there's a lot of value in that. A big voice.
Okay, so hearing that, it sounds like you want it to be more informal to pass it around first and then bring it back to ELTAC, or do you want ELTAC to convey the message first and have
The
that
message.
go out?
The message first. We need,
Seeing a
yeah.
bunch of nods for the message.
Yes.
I know you all can work independently and bring something together before some sort of formal vote comes to effect. But I guess that's the question is, do you want to vote on the message now before it gets started, or you want to start drafting something and bring something back as a stronger message that's more cohesive?
Do we have a subcommittee for this, or?
We can do that too. Yeah.
I feel like it'd be easier to collate ideas and get just something together and then say, yeah, this is good, or.
A working group or a
Working
subcommittee?
group, yeah,
Working group.
Working group. Oh,
We want a working group.
Yes.
I was whispered to over here. Pick the proper adjective.
right. So we're not going to vote on something, but we're going to have a working group that of interested members draft something and bring it back.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing.
Yes.
Okay.
In pretty short order.
All right. Good. I guess if you want to put your name in as being interested, just speak into the microphone and so you all know who you want to coordinate with one another.
I'm happy to help this, yeah.
You're Augustine
Yes, I'm Augustine.
you.
Count me in.
and Judy,
Myself as well.
Yeah, Teresa too.
Teresa and Rachel.
Saguna too.
And Saguna. So everyone.
I think we have to be less than a quorum, right?
Yeah, you can't have a quorum of members talk about the same thing outside of the meeting. So,
That's too many.
I think it's 5 is.
Allison is a member of the public, is volunteering, a non-ELTAC committee member. So, I'm gonna leave it to y'all to coordinate. You can feel free to loop me in if you need emails and things like that. Happy to spread those around.
If it's coming back in pretty short order, is there thought to when the next meeting would be?
Would you like the meeting to be focused on this topic when a letter looks to be ready to be discussed in shorter order before November?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Yes,
Yeah. Okay.
yes.
We can pivot to that topic in a bit. I have another public comment here about just having difficulty getting some things is difficulty getting iodine because it's having to be registered as a controlled substance. Is that another common issue? This is from a member of the public.
That's a DEA rule.
Mhm.
I think that's been in effect since probably the early 2000s. So I think a lot of established laboratories have a process for it, but a smaller laboratory who may not have the same controls, because there are requirements to have someone who, like the chemical hygiene officer, and there's also requirements for certain like security requirements around it, that it may pose challenges for smaller laboratories. I am unaware if there is any exceptions for size for laboratories.
Oh, so it's a full stop. Everyone who's ordering this got to have this kind of thing. Okay.
They send you a lot of very in-depth paperwork, and you have to have a lot of people sign their.
I might direct the commenter towards you to get some more questions and thoughts about. Yeah. Okay.
They should talk to their vendor too. That's what I've had to do to get those things cleared.
That's a good comment, though.
Yeah, I believe that is not related to our tariff issue either. And there are some like iodine, and I think that one of the other items is barbituric acid. These vendors have extensive paperwork because of either it's a narcotic or a controlled substance.
Excellent. Looking over for comments again. No, I had. Okay, great. So we are going to pivot a little bit to talk about the next ELTAC meeting scheduling. And we want to have one earlier for this specific topic, which is great. That's the whole point of setting the rules in place. So we have the full meetings on May and November, and then anything that we have like specific topics we want to talk about, bring forward. I'll open it up to have any suggestions of when you guys want to have it. I'll do my best to get it as close to the when as you guys desire, but I'll leave it open for when. Before November. But yeah, we'll have one in November, but just on tariffs and supply chain and potentially a letter that'll be ready before then.
I understand it's short order and it's going to be a little bit of a pressure, but from the research I've done, a lot of these pricing changes will be going into effect in July. So to minimize impact, we should probably meet end of June.
I was thinking the same
Okay.
thing.
Yeah, I agree.
End of June.
I know it's not a lot of time, but
That might be difficult to do, so I will get to as close to the end of June as I can, but I'll send out a poll. It's probably going to be more likely in July, just based on availability of space, more than anything else. It's going to be the same way. In person, I can check to see if the current laws allow for remote only. So that'll be homework for me. Remote only.
Because I could see where the May and the November meetings, but if it's a special meeting to address a subject that's of public interest, then is there a provision for that?
I don't think so, but it's homework for me. So I'll let you all know. And then that would be noticed whenever that meeting is too. So we can't ever have an LTAC meeting that's less than 10 days away. I have to give public notice for 10 days. So we can't meet on June 15th. but it'll be later than that and probably closer to the early times of July. So I'll see what I can do. And where I can be flexible, I will. in terms of remote only. That might be an option still.
Volatility in this situation. If for some reason, because right now we don't know if everything just goes away, do you have the ability to cancel it?
Yeah, we can cancel it. Yeah,
Because I don't, at this point, we don't know, right? Next
I-
week, we could not have
yeah,
to worry about
yeah.
it, so.
I'm with you there. Of every day, it felt like for a while it was on and off every single day. Trying to keep track of anything is a nightmare. But I will circle back with the committee to find out what I can do and when we can do it. If it's going to be in person, it'll be much later, and it'll be a poll for availability to just kind of gauge if we're going to even be able to have a quorum of people. Great. Okay, I have homework to do. But we will move along to agenda item 6 that's already being displayed of ELTAC topics and priorities. So I have 3 of them that I've written down already. One of them is returning to the tariffs and supply chain, kind of a check-in in November. And this will be for the November meeting. The other one I have is the toxic species availability. Or the toxicity species availability. So I don't know if Peter wants to go into more depth on kind of what you could see ELTAC providing, or if it would be beneficial to have informal connections, or how you want to talk about that.
Yeah, so I mean, I think that ultimately this is something that can be done in a working group. It is something that needs to be revisited, whether I do it outside of this committee or not, because let's be honest, everybody else that's sitting here for the most part, some of you are affected by it, but how much you're necessarily going to help me push the push the can down the road, I'm not entirely sure. So, you know, I think that ultimately there is an angle that affects ELAP in the sense that, you know, if there is a change to a currently unaccredited or not well recognized species, there may have to be some adaptations made. I mean, for the most part, I would suggest that ELTAC takes it up as a arm of a multi-pronged approach that I'm going to have to go at the state and the regional boards with. So I think that ultimately, whether a working group is formed today or not is a little irrelevant. I'm going to continue. I've been working on this for better part 8 months now, and I'm going to continue to do so. But it would, I think, it would be another avenue and another channel if LTAC was able to provide, you know, a little bit of a prong on this approach that I'm trying to get through. So I would like to revisit it in November. Just a simple answer to your question.
Okay, we can add it for the November one, yeah. And Erica, you and I will work and we'll see what we can do if we can bring in. I'm seeing the little virtual thumbs up, but we'll work together and see what we can do to bring in some other folks that would be maybe more relevant to that specific topic and conversation.
Yeah, no, I mean, from your guys' perspective, certainly, you know, folks at the state board or those that have some connection to fish and wildlife, there's a couple different aspects of this that can be chased down. But yeah, I'm happy to have a conversation offline with you guys about it.
Yeah, and I'll just add, we are in touch with folks from CDF and W right now. So, sorry, am I saying that wrong? Fish and Wildlife. Sorry, CFW. Yeah. So I think that we might have all the different people needed. So, yeah,
Okay.
just happy to maybe stay in touch with you as well as we kind of
Yeah,
figure
no,
how
I
to
mean,
bring this back.
we should connect. I've spoken with them a few times. I'm curious what you've got.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds great. Yeah, I really appreciate it. I think we could I think this might be a great place to sort of help navigate through collaboration. So
All right, so that's going to be a topic in November, which is good. It's way more in advance than 30 days, so this is nice. Gives us a lot of time to hopefully get everyone that we want to be there. I'm going to tee it up next for the last item I had written down for John Franco, who's talking about PT availability and how that could be a potential topic. So it was brought up earlier. All right, I'm hearing nothing. So I'm going to return to the open group then to focus on any other topics that you wanted to bring up and potentially have discussed. Go ahead, Judy.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure that all of the laboratories were knowledgeable of the methylene chloride change last year. Okay, fortunately, on May 27th, EPA came out with a proposal to extend the implementation period for analytical laboratories, for environmental labs. And that was chiefly because ACIL, myself and David Friedman went and met with EPA, and we spent a few months providing information to them from a number of municipal labs who were kind enough to disclose their monitoring data to us in an anonymous way, as well as a number of my competitors. And we brought that data together, cleansed it, and used that data to show EPA that we are very mindful of how we protect our workers, and that the fact that they're asking us to do something where we're required to use EPA methods using volumes of methylene chloride that we can't control, they were understanding of that and have come out with this. We had no idea how they were going to actually respond to us on this. And when they put out the pre-publication notice on May 20th, obviously, we were thrilled. They came out with the actual notice on May 27th. There is a 30-day comment period, but I can't imagine anybody's going to come in with anything negative against this, except for maybe they might say, well, that's not enough time. But I'm going to tell you honestly, it's more time than what we had. And maybe it will give us a chance to work with the program offices on some possible solutions for the future, because at the end of the day, there's very little options for us as an industry to eliminate methylene chloride or to reduce it. We either reduce it in the methods, we reduce it using good technology, or we reduce it by replacing it with another solvent. And we all know that if there was another solvent out there available, we would have already done that. And so there's a number of things, and I know that there's, all of the labs work on new technology, and this isn't a race to get to the very end. It's a diligent journey to find some good options along the way so that we don't compromise data that's already been produced. And that's always been our concern. Is this is not something that you rush to find a solution for, because you've got 50 plus years worth of data that you've got to continue to represent in a comparable way. So here we all are. Now we're going to, what I hope that this does is I hope that it sparks more effort towards good innovation. And of course, I realize, we're talking about instrumentation floating around the Pacific in containers right now because of tariffs. So I realize that there's some challenges there in that regard. But from the scientific perspective and the scientific side and what we know as seasoned professionals, we know that we have to continue to find better ways. And I hate to beat the drum of sustainability, but that's really part of it too. It's the sustainable side of things and reducing the toxins in the process without compromising the data. So that's where I wanted to bring that up and let if you didn't know about it, let you know about it, that there is an extension out there, and I hope that we can continue to work together with the federal community on the methods and come up with some good options because of it. So anyway, good news, I guess.
So I guess I'm going to redirect that to be a little bit more specific. Would you, or maybe some other volunteer, be willing to provide info on this is what we do to reduce methylene chloride? thankfully we don't have to eliminate it yet, or as a more of a informational item to the community as a
I
whole.
think we could do that. Yes, absolutely.
All right, I need a volunteer or volunteers to have a presentation for the next one then. You got lots of time now. It's in November.
I could do it. I already gave some presentations on this stuff, so yeah.
All right, here in Augustine.
I think what Judy mentioned was there isn't a better. I mean, we could use chloroform or carbon tetrachloride, right? It's not better. But what we've done is try to innovate and use less of it and do different techniques. So we could talk about that stuff and an informational piece. Yeah.
And part of what we will need eventually, though, is the federal with the EPA to allow those micro extractions in one.
So it's interesting, and I'm glad you brought that up. One of the things, so keep in mind, we had over 600 data points that was given to us that went into this one spreadsheet of monitoring. And it was 2-year monitoring from some of the biggest labs, as well as municipalities. So I mean, this was a good cross section of data, and where the exposure limit has been reduced from 25 to 2 and the action level from 12.5 to 1, the laboratories that had reduced volume in place consistently hit that 2 mark. Now, they didn't consistently hit the 1. Now, keep in mind, this is without them knowing that there's any kind of anything coming. This is data from 2024 and 2023. So you got to figure laboratories doing reduced volume extractions are already hitting 2 and 1. I will tell you the industry average, though, just across the board, is around 5. And that's not bad. That's not bad. I was very proud to see the numbers and very proud to see how well the numbers, the cross section of numbers, as the highs and the lows, how it kind of all came to this middle group of results, and that they were in that 5 to 6 range. And so it was very good data, but the reduced volume, very good point, because it could absolutely be done with that, with a little bit more conscious effort, I believe.
They're currently done in other industries. It's just we've been kind of held back a little bit by some of the regulations. So yeah, it can be. Other industries have eliminated methylene chloride to very low levels for that reason.
And to add on that, I think we'd also need help from ELAP to promulgate those to FOAs and those quickly. Because if the federal government can get it done fast, it'd be great if ELAP can also put them in so we can start using those. And
I know that's going to be part of the hang up is we're stuck with what the feds say that we can do. So for some of the things. So if you want to put that in your presentation of like, use these, look at this method, things like that, that'd be good too.
One of the things about that, when we revised 608 and 625 many years ago, and really, I say that many years ago, it's been within the last 10 years, they actually allowed for reduced volume in those methods. And now they made the maximum or the minimum, if you would, 100. So the 3511 that's in, in SW 846 for the 8000 series methods isn't applicable to the 600 series. You couldn't do the 40 mil, the 40 mil vial, but you can go down to 100, which is a 90% reduction in methylene chloride. So, which is a huge difference. So, there's provisions there. There is provisions for SPE, but we all know those are challenges because of the amount of solids in in the wastewater samples. I mean, just the matrices alone just don't support SPE like we wished it could. Now, if we could be innovative and find a better SPE system for that, that'd be great. But the reality is we haven't found it yet. So, but the reduced volume has a lot of promise, and there is provision in the 600 series methods. And there's a lot of things going on from an ATP perspective too, around GC triple quad and LC triple quad and some other things. I mean, LC triple quad, no prep involved. So, I mean, there's some things going on out there that I think if we can strike the right balance and get some good strides, I think we'll be able to find some good options.
Any other topics from the committee members that you want to see LTAC focus on in the next meeting, or even as a goal of eventually we want to focus on this topic? Any of those? Go ahead.
I don't want to be the AI guy. Yeah, okay. But maybe something to bring up, right? As AI becomes more prevalent across all industries, we're using artificial intelligence in our lab for a lot of things, but things that we don't use it for, stuff like data review and stuff that could, impact data quality. So maybe something to bring up in an LTAC meeting to put guidance, for ELAP to say, hey, look, maybe these are restrictions where you shouldn't be using these tools. Or they're helpful, but it's a lot of questions. Like, I don't know if you heard, but the California bar is in some hot water because they use AI to write the bar questions, and they're like hard, like impossible to answer. So it's like bad news.
And there's already products already fully developed, already being used in pharmaceuticals and other markets, which do all of your processing. So first order processing for chromatography through AI. And I mean, it's all validated, et cetera. And but these are things that are out there that, I mean, I think we really have to come to a decision on where that's applicable and where it isn't. Because we do fall into that, the danger is that someone uses something and assumes it's correct, and then you end up with a court challenge.
Yeah, this actually came up in one of my management conversations. Another management person asked if we could start using AI as a secondary review instead of a peer review. And I'm like, no, we have to make sure, right? So it can affect data quality, as you mentioned. So having some kind of balance, I think, is a good idea.
It's a good topic. I like that one. I'll put that's on the list. Keep in mind for that one what kind of document you want to see. So if we're going with the formal recommendation of like a letter that says these are what LTAC recommends, we can do that. That sounds like a good use for that kind of tool that can live in perpetuity on ELAP's website, and we can point labs, hey, you're talking about AI, go look at this.
Just to add to that, I think there's some caveats and cautions around AI anyway. And to just kind of further talk about where the boundaries ought to be, it's hard to talk about where the boundaries ought to be because there's so much expectation of what AI can do that there's a false sense of security as to what you get back. I mean, to your point about the California bar, there was another issue up in the state of New York just a couple of months ago where New York is being looked at for some things from the standpoint of things on their website, and some decision was made that backfired, and it's because they kind of just decided that AI was something that could be trusted. But just recently, I heard on the news that drug approval in clinical trials, hundreds of thousands of data points, that review has now been reduced to 6 minutes. And that's what we're going to trust. So I hope there's more to that than just the sensationalism that came across the news on it, the oh wow factor. But I have to say that there's an awful lot of faith being put into a tool that at the end of the day still has to be trained on right or wrong, just like anything else. And if nobody's out there training the wrong, can't everything be right? And that's what's so scary. So I love the idea of having some kind of document or some kind of recommendation of just that kind of mindfulness of think about this if you're going to use this.
So as a idea for next time, so that'll be on the agenda. We'll talk about that. Come with some written excerpts. So maybe we can slot those into some document and say, hey, we're going to finalize this with these kind of words, but this person's in charge of writing it and providing it to. So that way you can kind of speed up that process of somebody writes it and blah, blah, blah. So come with written things to help ferry those off to somebody to correlate. Good topic. I like that one.
I have a question. I don't know whether it's going to be a topic or not. I haven't heard an update on fees in a while. Is that working group still active?
Yes, there's a fees meeting Thursday next week. It's the
Yeah,
10th
no, not Thursday, Tuesday.
Tuesday.
So every couple of months, the Division of Administrative Services does fees stakeholder working group leading up to the fee revision every year. We are sending out the announcement with the meeting materials tomorrow. Their announcement forwarding it to our listserv. So you can hop on that on Zoom and listen in to them present information about our fund condition and what next year's fees are looking like.
Okay.
Yeah. Mhm.
I mean, I know it was something that LTAC had, weighed in on and, was a topic of discussion. And I
Mhm.
knew that there was a sort of subgroup that was
Mhm.
still working. It's just I hadn't heard anything in a little while. So thank you for that.
So we'll revisit it as part of this open item if needed, which will give us more time if needed. But yeah, Tuesday. Anyone online have any of the LTAC members online have topics that they want to bring up or have as a priority?
Yes, my name's Mary Carroll, and I'm with Performance Analytical Laboratories. And I'd like to have something brought up at a future date. Under ELAP TNI -2, the auditors are given 30 days to respond to our our audits, and then we're given 30 days to respond to that. Can we get ELAP to respond in 30 days when we submit a package? Not knowing the time frame makes it very hard for a small lab to get on projects that have new methods or whatever. So it would just be helpful to have a timeline. That's all.
Thanks for the comment. Does anyone on the LTAC committee want to discuss that? Because otherwise I will follow up after the meeting to talk with you individually. I think that might be a better ELAP question rather than committee question. Seeing head nods, so I'll follow up afterwards, Mary Carroll. Looking over, were there any others? Head shake. All right. With that, do you guys want to take a brief 5-10 minute break? I know we've been going for a couple hours in a row here and want to be mindful of everyone's time. I know we're almost done with the agenda topics, but just looking around as if anyone needs a break. Seeing shakes. Okay, we'll move on. And I was looking at Kate earlier for the public comments not on the agenda, and I didn't really see that beyond. So, okay. So next up, we have the LTAC chair and vice chair election. Judy has been our faithful chair for a long time now. And so I want to open it up for anyone to nominate any of the other committee members who they want to see or nominate themselves. I don't see any issue with nominating that. For those, I think we'll do nominate and then a second. So yeah, that's a good nomination. Or an agreement from the nominee, right? I nominate you. I don't want to do it. Like that's okay too. For a chair and then a vice chair. And we had talked about earlier exactly how we want the chair and vice chair to be elected because we haven't had a vice chair of the committee before. And so the question is going to be, do you want these to be nominated as separate positions or do you want them to be nominated as the one position and then whoever gets the most votes is chair and second runner-up is vice chair? Everyone here is nodding and saying the latter. For those online, do you have opinions? I'm seeing head shake. which I'm going to guess no opinions, right? All right, well, then I'll open it up to nominations.
Okay, I'm going to make a nomination. I'm going to nominate Augustin as chair.
Second.
Are you okay with that, Augustin?
Yeah, I'm good with it. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other nominations? Because we need more than one in order to make this work. Yeah, we need more than one because somebody has to be the vice chair. So.
Well, this is Dave here. I'm kind of going out bit of a limb because Shusmita, when she had asked me to be the alternate, she had mentioned wanting to be the vice chair. But without her here, I don't want to just, throw her under the bus or have her end up being the chair. But yeah, I will nominate her, barring her, I guess, if she were to withdraw that. But I believe that's what she wanted to do.
And provided that she doesn't withdraw it, I'll second that nomination.
Thank you.
Well, I mean, I don't know if we need to vote anymore, considering it seems like everyone has their minds made up. Do you all want those to be your chair and vice chair? Do you want me to call a roll call vote and we just vote for those two individuals? I'm seeing a lot of head nods here. I'm going to look online for Sam and David to shake their head yes.
Yes.
I hear a yes from Sam. Okay. All right. Ruby, do you want to please call a roll call vote? And we'll go through to have Augustine be the chair, the new chair, and Shushmita to be the vice chair, assuming that Shushmita does not want to withdraw her nomination afterwards. I don't think that'll be a problem, but if she does, then at the next meeting we'll have a vote for a vice chair position. So, go ahead, Ruby.
Agustin Pierre,
Do I have to abstain or? Oh, yeah, I guess he's fine.
Yeah, we're doing both at the same with the same vote. Yeah, I don't think it's worth roll calling everyone to do it a second time.
for James Forrest,
Yes and yes.
for Judy Morgan,
Yes and yes.
Kelvin Ewan,
Oh, yes and yes.
Peter Art,
Yes and yes.
Rachel Cahill,
Yes and yes.
Samuel Choi,
Yes and yes.
Suguna Pillay,
Same here, yes and yes.
David Dawes,
Double yes.
Teresa Johnson,
Yes and yes.
That's a unanimous agreement. So welcome to our new chair, and we will say welcome to our vice chair at the next meeting. Great. Well, that was super easy. I hope every election goes just as smoothly as that, because that was amazing. I know. Yeah, we'll figure it out in 3 years from now, right? The last item that we have on the agenda is the establishment of the next meeting. So we talked about the new bylaws where we want the meetings to be in May and November. That seemed to be fairly agreeable. So second week of November, I will put that out as early as I can. I already have a list of agenda topics, but if you have something that you want to bring up before then, you'll bring it up to Augustine and myself so we can get that on the agenda 30 days before the meeting. So whatever that works out to be sometime in October. Make sure that we get the agenda items. And then we talked about a single topic ELTAC meeting. We'll still check in to see if we can hold it remotely. If we can hold it remotely, we can definitely meet that June deadline. If we can't, It'll be sometime in July, and I'll do my best to get it as early as I can. And it'll be focused just on the tariff and supply chain, and hopefully we have some sort of written documentation that you all are more okay with that we can share in advance of the meeting too. Oh, yeah, I think you,
For that working group, we can meet virtually and,
yes.
okay.
Yeah, you're not meeting as a committee. So you're meeting as concerned individuals. So I'm making that clear for those folks. You're free to ask anyone outside of the committee too, and to work on that too. But no more than a quorum of members. If you see a quorum of members talking, let me know and stop.
I have-
Both of those things.
I already have 5 members, so I think we're good on members because the quorum is 6, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so
Yes.
we have 5 and then a member of the public.
Okay, good. Augustine's got the list of that. So I will get back to you on that. I don't know when I'll have an answer, but I will let everyone know. And that meeting will also be noticed 10 days in advance of whenever it occurs. So that's at the latest, hopefully sooner rather than later. And that'll be just on that topic. So be a shorter meeting. So hopefully we can still have it virtually. I don't know the answer to that question yet. So in the future, we won't be able to. So just keep that in mind. And that, since we've covered that really in the other topics, I'll leave it open if any of you all have any other comments about when you want next meetings to be, or any other establishment kind of procedures. But I don't, since we covered it already, I don't think we have any. Okay, well, with that, I think we can close it. I have some action items to go back to. We have topics for next time. And hopefully we'll have those as full agenda items. I will meet separately with John Franco to talk a little bit separately, and then same with the commenter, Mary Carroll. I'll meet with her separately to discuss her public comment, and talk about that in a little bit in the future. Looking to see towards the end of June, early July for the single topic to see if we can have that other thing, and then I have to coordinate with some folks at DWQ and the state board and maybe CDFA, and Erica and I will circle back and see what we can do for that one come November. The methylene chloride, you have a nice presentation for us as the chair.
I have a presentation. I don't know if it's nice, but
Yeah.
I'll have something.
Yours
for the
are always
meeting.
very nice. It'll be fine. And then we'll have open topic on AI data review and kind of write down what you think could be used and what can't be used, and have those written ideas to be collated into a recommendation come November.
I think so. If I can make a comment about that, if you guys could put together like not just data review, I think, because there are other applications of artificial intelligence in the lab. So things that you think would be fine, things that maybe with caution, and then we can put a guidance document together from that.
That sounds great. So I guess I'll hand it off to Augustine to adjourn the meeting.
Do I have to call for?
I don't know. Yeah, I think you just say it's
Do I
adjourned.
have a gavel?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. I guess we'll adjourn the meeting then and meet in June or July.
In June or July.
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you very much to everyone here in person. Thank you very much to those who've been sitting patiently virtually all day. Really appreciate everyone's attendance and involvement. This was pretty good. So thank you so much. And until next time.
Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
guys. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Have a great
Thank
day.
you.
Bye.
Thanks. Thank you.
I did not bring any business cards. No, that's quite all right. You know what?